Welcome to Magic Without Fears, the Hermetic podcast. And today we have a very special guest, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him before we have him on stage. Frater O.D. is an independent scholar, poet. That's exciting for me. I like poets. An author specializing in Western Esotericism with particular expertise in Greco-Egyptian Theurgy and Orphic traditions. His research explores the intricate relationships between ancient mythological systems and their practical applications in ritual contexts, examining how these systems function as transformative frameworks for consciousness. As the creator of the On the Mysteries YouTube channel, which is a new channel and one I've very much enjoyed checking out. I especially liked the episode on techno magic and AI. That was interesting. And his fun little episode on the Kabbalistic cross, which we'll talk about for sure. Frater O.D. offers rigorous intellectual explorations into occult philosophy, mythological hermeneutics, and the phenomenology of mystical practice. His work bridges the methodological approaches of academic scholarship and the experiential dimensions of esoteric traditions, creating a synthesis that illuminates both the historical context and contemporary relevance of these ancient wisdom traditions. Current scholarship projects include comparative analysis of Orphic rhapsodic theogonies, translations and commentaries on the Chaldean oracles, and original research on theurgic practices associated with Aphrodite. His poetic works, including the Ourania epic, demonstrate his commitment to revitalizing ancient forms through contemporary expression. So without further ado, thanks for joining us, everyone. We're going to have a fun night here. And welcome, Frater O.D. How are you doing?
Thank you, brother. Ave. I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful night. It's the nice, beautiful temperature of April here in Colorado, so it's not too hot yet. And
you're a Colorado guy, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Whereabouts? You don't have to be
Denver.
specific. Denver. That's So what's your thoughts on the airport? Is it really full of occult symbolism, or is that just nonsense?
You know, we joke about it locally. It's one of those things that's just part of the colloquialisms here. We talk about Lucifer and how he, supposedly killed the guy who created it. Wow. What's great about DIA now is they have marketing around the whole conspiracy. They've leaned into it, which is fantastic,
which is fun. Yeah.
I
think more people should lean into those things. So what's your background? I know a lot about what you're doing, and I read to people a bit about what you're doing, but sometimes it's really fun to go into people's backgrounds a bit and find out how they got to where they're at. Did you come out of a fraternal tradition like the OTO or the Golden Dawn or Masonry or anything like that, or did you find your way through circuitous wandering paths in the dark wood?
Yes, all the above. So I did spend some time in the temple system here locally in Denver. I wouldn't say I got as far as I could have. It just, it turns out that whole neophyte initiation ritual really does mess with your life if you're not ready. But it does in a good way, at least for me. It did. It spun me out in the way that I needed to be spun out. So I did have some background there in the local temple. But before then, I've been through quite a few different systems. After becoming baptized at the age of 23 by choice, my parents were like, "We're not going to baptize you. We'll let you decide that for yourself," which I'm very thankful for. At the age of 23, I was baptized, and that was my exit out of the church, ironically. This is my license to leave. It was an incredible experience. I did the entire Lent fasting from just about everything. Including the last 2 weeks was just bread and water. And I was really into this. I was really into this experience. And what I found upon doing that, and this was like my film project for my senior year of college, what I found was an invitation to find the divine in other systems, in other traditions. What I find so ironic about that is what was supposed to deepen my faith gave me an open door to leave in some ways, if that makes any sense at all. It did for me. And for the next little bit, I explored, some of my ancestral heritage. I leaned into some Native American traditions that were part of my ancestry. I leaned into going east, which I think a lot of us do when we are, I guess, disenchanted with the West. And I went to the East and studied. I didn't actually go there. I studied here locally, went to the Zen temples here, and really dug into Zen and Taoism in my 20s. That just seemed like the posh thing to do. And so that's what I did. What was funny about going East was it just led me right back West. And I found myself dabbling in some of the circles of, just basic Wicca, witchcraft, in my early 30s, and quickly grew through a lot of that, explored into Druidry, some more Celtic neo-paganism, and that led me just somehow just like shot me right through Europe all the way down into the Mediterranean. And that's when I started going, what's this Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn thing? I got to get in on some of that. I did that, and after a while I started to realize that the group work, not really my thing. I'm much more of a solitary guy. And it must just be my Aquarian, nature. I was like, no, I'm going to do this my way. And that has served me better in most instances. Not that there was anything that was super negative about group work. It just didn't fit. It just didn't fit for me. And so, that's what kind of has led me here today. Once I got into the Hermetic work, Egypt kind of became home base, and as that progressed, I started to look a little bit more north, up into Greece, and here we are today. I'm just a big mess of eclectic soup. That's really what I am, and much to the chagrin of many people, I'm sure, because I tend to swim in many streams.
And what drew you specifically to Aphrodite when you got to the Mediterranean, so to speak?
Okay, so no, that's a great question.
Is that a whole other can of worms?
Not necessarily, but yes.
Is it too soon to talk about the lovely Aphrodite?
No, it's never too soon to talk about her with the capital HER. So I was working with the Shem HaMephorash. I was really into working with the 72 angels. And I was actually working through a very intense period of working with one every 5 days in the decanic cycle with them. And so I would basically be invoking, meditating heavily, praying, working with the Psalms with them, and intense purifications too. For some reason, I really believed that was what I was supposed to be doing at the time. And I just keep getting this feedback loop saying, no, dude, this is not right. And I'm like, okay. So I developed a fairly strong relationship with Gabriel, and as the messenger working through me in that time. And what came about from that was like this intense asceticism, which was like, let's just, we'll say it's retention. We'll just say retention for sakes and purposes. Was like, no, you need to explore some healing in this regard. And basically it was Gabriel, an angel from an Abrahamic system, that says, you've got to go work with her. And I said to myself, why? I'm not interested in the Greek current. I have never had any interest in the Greek current. And Aphrodite, least of all, I that was not something that was at all a part of what I was aiming for. But I listened, and here we are today, because what I found in that ecstatic working of sorts was healing, and a how do I say it? Self-love was the one thing that I was lacking there. I'm an intellectual guy. Like I said, Aquarius is very flighty. I mean, my head is going 1,000 miles an hour at all times. And what I needed was to drop into my body. I needed to understand embodied existence in a deeper way. And the way to do that was through a feminine goddess of beauty and love and sexuality and all of this. And it was not something that I was anticipating. And for me, I don't have the words, which is probably why I'm trying to write the Ourania epic, because as a piece of gratitude, because the words, they don't come that easy when it comes to expressing the gratitude that I have for that.
Yeah, the intellectual Aquarian struggle is very real. I'm very familiar with it. I have a Mars and Mercury in Aquarius in the 4th house, and almost conjunct, slightly conjunct. So yeah, it's quite a trip, and we do have a hard time getting in touch with our bodies. I found for sure. Like I got quite a shock when I was in the Golden Dawn and went into the Earth grade. I just felt like I was sort of locked within my body, and even my sensitivity to energies and everything like that just went away, and it took quite a while to come back. But it
it is like that. I think we spend so much time locked in headspace, or like what I like to call hyper Ouranianism. It's just Ouranos and no Gaia. It's like, for me, that's what it feels like at times. It's like, oh, I have a body. Oh, that's right. I should probably feed it, or I should probably move or do something, because I can disappear here for hours at a time.
Yeah. So we both opted for adult baptism, you and I. That's interesting. And you went east and ended up with the Hermetic stuff, the Hermetic path a bit. And I went west from the east. I grew up in yoga as a child and didn't know anything about Christianity. And then I found the Hermetic stuff, and that brought me west. So we went different directions, but they seem similar paths. Wicca, Druidry, of course. I'm still a very active bardic type druid.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, what's with the Auranic? I don't know what you really mean by that. Can you tell me more about that? Because I'm a poet as well. I'm a hardcore poetry writing person. Always have been. Like grade 10, we had romantic poetry as a class for 3-4 weeks in Waldorf school. And I heard my teacher at one point say, traditionally poets train themselves by writing 100 sonnets or Shakespearean sonnets or whatever kind of sonnet you want. And so what did I do for the next 3 years? I wrote 100 sonnets, of course. I was like, let's get my stripes as a poet. And so what is going on with this Ourania poem or epic? And I love that you characterize it as a thanksgiving for what's already happened in your life. That is very cool. I think more people should approach magic in that way, rather than thinking, what am I going to get? What can I do for what I've already gotten? Giving thanks. Thanksgiving is the central part of Hermetism, you could argue.
I would agree.
You could really argue that. Well, their big prayer is the prayer of Thanksgiving. That's the big prayer in the Hermetic writing. And I've been saying it a lot these days. And it's very weird to have the word penis in a prayer, but you roll with it. There's a version without penis, but like it's pretty odd. Like you're like, when I've done it with some students or fellow magicians, and we're like da 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 da, and his penis, and everyone's it's just this jolt to the senses. But in some ways, I like that. I'm not sure why. Maybe you could put your finger on why. It's something about anything that shocks your consciousness during in altered consciousness seems to have a lot of value. I'm not necessarily sure it's always good value. Could be very bad. Like, you wouldn't want to be doing ritual work with someone who then makes a fake farting sound in the ritual space and tries to get a chuckle. That wouldn't be cool for me. I would not work with that person again. But maybe depending on the ritual, if you're working with some trickster god, that would be exactly what brings the god into stronger manifestation. Who knows?
It's certainly possible. I've found that if I have any expectations or assumptions about what's going down when I'm in a ritual setting, then I'm in the wrong headspace, because I'm not allowing it to unfold as it needs to for me. Which is probably why solitary is the way that I've gone. What I found so often working in group ritual settings was the expectation of what the ritual was supposed to do or what I was supposed to feel. and or my own misinterpretation of it, right? Well, so-and-so said that this occurred when they did the ritual, so maybe I should have the same experience or it didn't work, right? I think that's something that happens very early on with a lot of us, is the comparison of the result, right? Sure, magic is a science. We want to reproduce results. It's also a devotional path. And if the results are always going to be the same, then for me, anyways, that cuts, I don't know, it cuts against the grain for spiritual development. If we're all going to be following the same exact ritual path, are we any different? Are we any different at all? Right? So devotion is a key piece for me. And that's why the Ourania epic is one of the pieces that I'm releasing on Substack. Is I like how you posited it earlier. Magic for a lot of people is, what can I get out of this ritual? Whether that's spiritual development, psychological change, healing, or straight up manifesting or materializing something in our life, right? That's what it is for a lot of people. For me, I have found it's much more, what's the word? It's much more desirable to let things be as they need to be. And ritual has become more devotional, if that makes sense for you. It's a process of thanksgiving, or it's a demiurgic imitation. Let's put it that way for me at this point. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. My camera just stopped working for some reason. I just unplugged it and replugged it in. Yeah, just ignore me. Keep going. You're doing great. My invisibility ritual finally kicked in. 25 years too late. Damn, I was just trying to get backstage at Evanescence. I'm sure I'll appear at some point in a second.
I hate it when that happens, when the invisibility ritual kicks in 25 years too late.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah, I literally don't.
We'll give him a second, folks.
I mean, keep talking. I mean, if my camera's not going to pick me up for some reason, that's odd. That's weird. Keep going.
But yeah, going back to the devotional piece, ritual. Pretty soon after leaving the Golden Dawn Temple, I found that for me, most of this journey was not going to be what my exports were going to be from my inputs, if you know what I mean. It was a process of constant service towards the gods or towards my fellow humans. And that's what most of my ritual, most of my writing is at this point. It is an act of service, of thanks, of gratitude for the absolute beautiful nature of multiplicity that just explodes from the unity that I've experienced in ritual. Ritual, I think, gets us there, to that point of understanding that separation is illusory, that separation isn't actually there. But then we have to return to this place of separation, at least in some form, and we have to do something. We have to continue. And for me, that is in building and or creating, whether that's art, whether that's writing, whether that's making videos, having conversations like these. It is me doing my best imitation of that creator, of the demiurge, if you will. So if we go with a more Platonic or Orphic situation, I'm just imitating what the big guy upstairs is doing and celebrating and delighting in this separation and this beauty that is. And so that's, I think, a big part of what my writing is all about, is celebrating it. Celebrating how everything is so beautifully different, but the exact same at the same time. That wonderful paradox, that's always fascinated me. How is it this and that at the same time? And we have people argue over that ad nauseum, especially in these circles. But What are you going to
really?
do?
What's the argument? What's the argument going on these days? It's not what I'm aware of. Is it like a version or just another rendition of classic theodicy? How can things be good if there's evil or something like that?
Oh, I think it's more of it's either all one or it's all not. You know, the classic dualism. You know, at least, or that's my perception of where people are talking. Maybe it's because that's my fixation, and I see it played back in other people's conversations, or let's say interlaced in people's conversations, where I see they're really struggling with that. Well, if it's all one thing, then what am I doing here, right? Why am I having this experience as me if it's all illusory and I'm all, one thing? This one of the things that I think I see the most in public discourse in these circles is transcendence versus immanence. Either I got to get out of this place because it's bad, because they're suffering, I've got to leave, or there's people who are like, you know what, I'm here, I'm going to make the best out of it. I'm going to make lemonade, right? Because this is all clearly the divine picture that we're all looking at or experiencing. And why can't it be both at the same time? Virtually every tradition I've studied has that paradox at the core of it. It's both, which is why my answer to most questions is yes.
Yeah. Well, dualism is certainly an easy solution to, I think, a complex spiritual problem. And I think it's, for me as a monistic type person, as a hermetist, that's too easy a solution. And it's interesting how the Hermetica deals with that, right? Because it's a monistic view, right? It's panentheistic, so God is radically transcendent and radically immanent at the same time. But how is it possible then that all of creation is dirty or corrupt or evil or has that within it, and God doesn't? And they have to say, well, because God alone is purely good. Everything else has a bit of dirt, is the word they use. Like there's a bit of dirt. And I think that's so easy to relate to, right? Because, God created in the Hermetic cosmology, God, the monad, creates the cosmos, and the cosmos creates everything else. And the cosmos is, it's got dirt because we are made of dirt. Literally, we're literally made of matter. But at the same time, the Hermetica gives us a bit of optimism there, because it says, but hey, the fact that you're embodied means that not only does your holy daimon, when you die, become like the star gods. So you've got a god within you that is a deathless god when you die, that reemerges as a deathless god, just like the star gods, but actually in a way better. But the Hermetica also says, but you're twice that. You're a god 2 times, because you're embodied, you're a god in flesh, and you're a dying god. So you're dying, we're dying gods, and we're deathless gods 2 times gods. So that is quite, of course, an optimistic point of view of things. And what I like about it, of course, is that it gives equal shrift to our transcendental self, our higher self, but it also invites us to take ownership of that divinity embodied in this life, because there is nothing else like us that we've encountered in manifestation, in manifest reality of nature, that is like us. We haven't seen it yet. They say they're flying around, but we have not seen it, right? Unless you're like Billy Corgan and one shapeshifted in front of you,
Oh, yes.
It looked like he seems to believe, he believed it happened, and who are we to judge? But yeah, just the idea that we are not only are we going to be returned to our state as deathless gods, like the star gods, but even perhaps better, and even perhaps better than the angels in some ways. But in this body, we have the chance to create and perform like dying gods. And that's just, you can really see the influence of both the Osiris cult and early Jesus worship in that 3rd century Hermetism of Alexandria, and Isis, yeah, of course, all of it, like all the death, and
Dionysus is very much along those lines. Particularly in the Orphic tradition, you have
Dionysus, right?
Part Titan ash, right? The matter and then part Olympian divinity. So he is that transcendent Olympian divinity at the same time that he is made of the titanic matter, which is in the case of Orphic, cosmology, the Titans are those that build and weave and create matter from the direction of the transcendent, father, Zeus, right? But at the same time, this is what's really interesting too. Dionysus had to be born in such a way to become immanent. Does this sound at all like Johannian Trinitarianism? Yes, it does, because it was there 600 years before in the Orphic tradition. It's in the Derveni Papyrus. Go read it. It's funny because the story has been played out, I don't know how many times, ad nauseum for 3,000 years or more, and we're still struggling with it today, which is why I think the stories are so important to keep telling and to keep putting them in people's faces. And that's half the reason I started the YouTube channel. Was we've already forgotten these stories from 2,000 years ago, let alone 5,000 years ago. So we need to just keep replaying them over and over and over again, because we're clearly not getting the message that we are divine and we are mortal at the same time. And I think the reason I harp on it so much is we can do so much good in this existence. We can do so much good if we simply accept that it is, instead of trying to get out of it, trying to think our way out of it, trying to magic our way out of it, trying to fool our way out of it. It seems like that is the aim of modern occultism, is to somehow escape, instead of utilize the opportunity to do something really special with the life that we have here. And maybe I'm not being so kind to modern occultism, but it's just one
are
of
you
those things I've
talking
seen.
about a certain cross section? Are you talking about the new
I've seen it
wave
across
of
all
young
of them.
people emerging? Like,
I've seen it across everybody.
Yeah,
I think it's just it's a natural human thing. It's a general thing.
Pandemic of thought.
Well, I think once you get into this, there's so much that happens, both spiritually and mentally. You're rewiring your entire worldview, your entire perspective, right? And you come up against some really interesting philosophical problems, like you've already illustrated with dualism. It's a clean solution, but it's not satisfying to the soul.
Super easy. Some spirits are good, some are bad. Just like people, some go to hell, some go to heaven. What's the problem?
Perspective. And it's perspective that's taught instead of experienced.
And once you have that dualism, then you could have a person decide who goes to heaven and hell and who's in charge of everything. And, and that person just died.
Not.
Yeah, we just lost the Pope. Was he a Jesuit or a Franciscan Pope? I think he was a Jesuit. Franciscan, and it was, Ratzinger was the Jesuit. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll see how that whole thing goes. I think that it'll be interesting, considering the state of things in the world, how that shakes out. That's a whole lot of energy behind that one guy at one time. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, yeah. I mean, he did do some good things. Apparently, he raised the age of consent for boys in the Vatican from 9 to 12. So, progress.
Progress is one of those things.
Maybe one day a Pope will raise it to 13 or 14. I don't know what the actual number is, but it was 9 or something crazy.
Progress is one of those things that's never fast enough for us. Progress is never fast enough for us because the long arm of cosmic justice or cosmic progression doesn't happen in our lifetime. And as we are finite beings, right? As far as this perspective is considered, we're never going to see it.
Apparently, someone says he was a Francis was a Jesuit. I really thought he was a Franciscan, but I think you're right. Yeah, I don't know. I'll take
I'm
your
not a
word for it,
Catholic,
Vesper.
so
Yeah. Yeah, I was for a minute, but yeah. Those were young idealistic days in my life. Yeah, the church world turned out to not be so much for me. And it's not that I didn't love the work, it's just I realized a lot of the work would involve things that I didn't want to spend my life doing, like dealing with kids, and their parents, essentially. I was interested in being a priest to celebrate the mysteries, but dealing with parents and their kids and the police and the church board is basically unending. It's nonstop. It happens. You're constantly dealing with stuff like that, and you're the go-between, and it's kind of a nightmare. I think that's what wears down a lot of clergy, actually. Is the attempt to regulate social lives, like, obviously I was working in the Anglican church, and there's no moralism telling people how to live their lives at all, like there is in Roman Catholicism. And in Roman Catholicism, they try to keep sort of hear no evil, see no evil approach. They don't want to lose their parishioners by being too judgmental or harsh. But yeah, there's just there's a strong emphasis on being you get caught up in people's. It's some dark stuff. I don't want to go there. That's why I'm skirting it, as you can tell. So anyway, it turned out once again that there was the Hermetism once again rescued me from becoming too much of a dualistic kind of Christian Catholic type person. So I've continued to walk that fine line, I suppose.
I think you said something interesting there, though. You wanted to be a part of the mysteries. You wanted to be a part of that, to experience the mysteries, but didn't necessarily have it in you to deal with the day-to-day, right? And I think that, if I may, illustrates, I think, a great deal of what I was talking about before. All of us want to experience the mysteries. But I think that our modern perspective, and don't take this as me coloring your situation, I think it speaks to a larger question of we want to experience the mysteries, but we don't want to let them go and return to what we have to do, which is be here, right? Just to quote Mr. Doss, Mr. Ram Dass, be here now. You go and experience the mysteries, and it teaches you everything you need to know about how to live here now. And I think that is one thing that we all get caught up in. You see initiation chasing. I'm going to go from this order to this order. I'm going to find it over here, or I'm going to find it over here. And that
people love to do that these days. Maybe it's always been popular, actually.
I think it is. I mean, like, there's so many ways you can experience it, right? I am guilty as charged. I will go and explore the latest thing as soon as it comes out. I'm a sucker for the latest demiurgic creation. Just let me experience it, man. But it does speak to a psychological challenge that we have. That mystery is so beautiful, so tantalizing that we want to stay there, but we can't. We can bring part of it back and implement that in the world, but it's tough work, right? And I think that not everybody's up to that task. That's why I think, to be someone in the clergy, whether that is today in modern religion or if it was in late antiquity or before, that job wasn't for everybody. We can't all be magicians. We can't all be clergy. Some of us just need to experience the mystery and go back to being, the carpenter or the farmer. This is the way it was done at Eleusis. Not everybody came out and was the temple priest after experiencing the Dionysian mysteries. So I think that kind of goes back, it dovetails into what I was kind of riffing on earlier, was this escapism model that I see so played out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like given your comments, I will clarify what basically, so my first day as an employee working for a church, I was director of youth ministry, of course, and it was my last year of seminary. And right, my day one in the sacristy, two of the kids came into me and said the previous youth minister was molesting the little boys in her office, and she was like 19 when she got the job, or 18 when she got the job.
Jeez.
And had just quit at age 21, so she was quite a bit younger than me. And it was so right away, like day one. So what do I do, right? And obviously, if I report it and destroy this young girl's life, who these kids may or may not be telling me the truth, I don't actually know, right? But you've got to report these things. So, but that also means you lose your job
first
pretty
day.
much. Yeah. Well, you pretty much are done with the Anglican Church if you report that stuff. And that sounds bad. Like they wouldn't mean to. No one's going to hire you if you report stuff like that on your first day. And so I basically banged my head against the wall until for like 7-8 months, and then I was like, yeah, I'm done, guys. I said I'm done. They're like, yeah, we felt you should be done anyway. I'm like, yeah, you think? My first demand that they put a big window in my office door, and they looked at me like, oh shit, this guy knows some things. I'm like, it was just, it was hell. It wasn't, I was there. I wanted to celebrate the mysteries. I wanted to do, aim our attention at the spirit, but a lot of what goes on is social. I don't want to even be reductive and call it social drama, because that's not what it is. It's like, it's crap. It's hardcore crap, and and I was like, I was so young at the time. I was 25. I was like, this can't be the next 5 years of my life doing this. Like, I can't spend the rest of my 20s dealing with stuff like this. It's just, it's too gross. I will lose my love for life probably very quickly if I stay here doing work like this. And I think some people love doing work like that. There's a lot of people who love doing social justice and dealing with cops and bickering with power structures. Not for me. I was too mystical. So yeah.
Well,
that's what happened.
Thanks for sharing that bit with me.
Yeah, it's something for people to be aware of. It's something for people to be aware of when it comes to those vocations. You got to know that those vocations are not so much about the mystical stuff anymore. They're stripped of a lot of their mystical elements, and that, I think, is why we see esotericism on the rise, and why we're in the midst of this insane occult revolution where people are just exploring all kinds of different stuff. Like Golden Dawn stuff is now almost mainstream. You hear it's
happened fast
crazy.
too.
It's happened so fast that people don't know what to make of it or what to do with it. And like, what was your background in the GD? Do you want to talk about that, and how you see it, sort of how you see people handling it as it's gotten popular so quickly?
Yeah, we can riff on that for a little bit. For me, my experience was I read as much as I could before I got involved with the local chapter. And intellectually speaking, I was ready, but emotionally and spiritually was not ready to do the work. And so for me, I caution whenever anybody asks about it. It's like, if you want to sit down and do the GD material and do it in a group setting, even be prepared. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some things that they're going to rock you. And I think that's mainly, and it was for me, was I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't know that asking the question of, hey, I want my life to change, but I don't know what needs to change in my life, is going to bring everything toppling down. Because what's going to happen when you start doing the LBRP every day is it's going to completely restructure the way you think, the way you behave, the way that you act. It's going to restructure the way that you see the world. And that's going to topple everything you think you want right now. And so my first thing is always a caution. Do you like what you have right now? Do you like where you're at? Because it will change it. It will change it, and it will be tough sometimes. That was my experience with it at the very least. I won't talk too much more about anything to break any oaths or anything like that. But What I see is, at least with people doing it at a solitary rate, or a solitary, like say doing the Cicero books, is there's a lot of confusion. What does this mean? What am I actually doing when I do this ritual? Which is one of the reasons why I made the QC video, the Q cross video, was like, people are just doing it. And one of the things that I had to struggle with, at least in the temple, was, okay, but why? What does this gesture mean? What am I doing here? What is that? And the answer was, do it. And that was never really good enough for me. I eventually got answers, and I had to piece a lot of things together for myself, either through reading or research for what is the actual structure behind these rituals, and what is it doing to me or for me, right? And I'm sure that not everybody's experience in the Golden Dawn's the same. I've heard some horror stories, and I've heard some good stories. Mine was fairly neutral, other than just life-changing dramatically. and it in all honesty, just doing the baseline work through probationary, through neophyte, spun me back into abusing alcohol again, because I wasn't ready. And
wow.
What
probationary? You were in a group that had a probationary grade?
Yeah. It was almost 3 to 6 months of doing ritual before joining.
That's interesting. That must be something unique to that group to do that. I guess as a way
I haven't heard of it anywhere else.
Yeah, people. I could see why people would do that, just to make sure. It's it's so much work to get people going in the Golden Dawn system, whether it's in a temple or as self-initiates on their path. It's so much work.
I think it's good to screen
a lot of people don't. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how much work it is, and so the last thing you want is people wasting your time frivolously, thinking that they're serious,
that was part of it,
but having no intention to really continue. Who just want to sort of like, they're looky-loos. There's a lot of looky-loos. Usually, I think the stats I found are about a third of people would leave neophyte. Without go. Yeah, that was generally about the stats, I think, of it. And it still seems to be that in general today. So yeah, anyway, anything people can do to have, the original order, of course, astrally checked people out, and some adepts, some of us still do those sort of things, or do divination to see if someone should be allowed to join. That can variously make people very happy or very upset, as you can imagine, right? Some people, yeah. Interesting. So yeah, you're with the Denver group, I take it,
Yeah, the Temple of Ta. Oh, what was it? Ta-Toth. I'd have to look it up. It has been.
Yeah, there's probably a few.
That was around 20. I don't even know if the same group is active here anymore. It was in 2020. Just before 2019, right before the pandemic, when I joined that temple, and there was some drama that happened after I left, and so. I'm not entirely sure if they're even still around. I know a couple of the people who were in that I could ask, but
yeah, I know a lot of those people. I'm not going to mention them here because that's not what we're here to talk about. Obviously, I have a long history with a lot of these people, and that's cool. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, how long did you stay in the Golden Dawn tradition, practicing in the temple?
Not long. Like I said, the neophyte really spun me out.
That's crazy. It's so interesting that you're willing to talk about that. I find it fascinating.
I'm not ashamed of it, really, to be honest. And
it's great.
After I got my footing, I started working through a lot of the Cicero material on my own, because I think there was probably a little bit of shame of not sticking through or not being able to. It happens, that kind of stuff happens. You're not gonna fit in every system, and maybe ultimately it wasn't for me anyways. I don't technically really traffic in that anymore. I learned a great deal, and I'm thankful and grateful for that. The material does work, right? So like, I think it produces incredible change in you. But there's other systems that can do the same thing. And so it kind of led me somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Hermetic spirituality fundamentally believes that initiation is found by simply being open to and wondering and being reverential and devoted to the wonder of what's more beyond the physical world. That's it, right? It's this openness to that is what invites the higher consciousness to initiate within you. That's the bare bones Hermetic view of things. So yeah, of course, there's lots of ways to get there, and fundamentally, it comes from experiencing and wondering about nature. The Golden Dawn is has a lot in it. It's a very intricate way of going through that process, for sure. It's probably one of the most intricate ways of going through that process. I'm sure that someone's come up with something more complicated since then, but yeah.
100%.
There's a lot to sink your teeth into, and it certainly fits certain types of people very well, and other types not at all.
I think that I think for a lot of folks, the religious iconography can be a turnoff for some, especially those who are still grappling with any trauma they may have experienced, in the church in general. I find that a lot with people. They'll ask questions about it. Oh, what's the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn? Oh, they've got all this kind of Christian. There's archangels. I'm not sure I'm into that. I hear that a lot, and I'm like, well, just try it out. I mean, do you think? I think it's interesting the resistance towards the archangels, in particular, with people, and switching everything out on the LBRP ritual for either pagan iconography is interesting. People really want to just avoid that whole Christian veneer that the Golden Dawn has on it, and try and do the same system with different reskins. And for me, anyways, the most potent seems to be the way that they have it marked out. I've done the basic LBRP with, I think Cicero has an Egyptian one in the Middle Pillar. I think the Middle Pillar book by Rigardi that the Ciceros did, there is an Egyptian one that I did that is really effective, but it replaces the archangels. But you can't just swap anything in there. I don't think it necessarily always functions. It functions sometimes.
Yeah, which makes sense if you take the more grimoire. Like, a lot of people these days have gotten the misconception that the Golden Dawn was some sort of crazy psychological approach to magic, which it doesn't take much reading of this GD system to know that was not the case. Right? The members certainly didn't view things that way because they were communicating with angels and getting teachings directly from the very same four archangels that Dee and Kelly were taking teachings from. In that sense, the entire system is a manifestation of those archangels. So it makes sense if all of a sudden you switch out a different being, you're no longer attracting the benefits that those beings have offered if you do this, this, and that, right? So that's always interesting. It's like, yeah, why would you expect some other spirits that have never didn't create this system to be like, to attend to it? I don't, yeah. And of course the archangels aren't Christian, even they're Judaic. So like there's a Judeo-Christian veneer on the system for sure, but not really explicitly. It's not exclusively Christian, of course. It's
no, I mean, because you have Egyptian iconography Greek, in there as well.
It's so many things. Yeah, it's so syncretic, which is what Hermetists were. They seem to have been early interfaith people, in a sense.
That's the whole of late antiquity, really. That's what people syncretic. I don't think realize is everything was shared. You had Christians talking to Orphics, talking to Egyptian priests, talking to traditional Greek priests, and everything in between from the Near East as well. And they were all sharing. And what I love about that period and why I'm so fixated on it in general is it seems that they had a running unspoken rule, which was, oh yeah, that's our guy. We know that guy. We just call him this, and they were okay with that, it seems. Sure, there was religious spats. There were people fighting over this, that, or the other thing. But generally speaking, you read the writers from that time period, and they were like, well, we call it this, and they call it that, and they call it that, and everybody seemed to be okay with that. But now that's no longer a go in the modern world. There's way too much division there. At least we don't get as much of it in esoteric circles, but it's still there.
Well, I think it is still a go. I just think it's not trendy or on vogue anymore. And I think I'd love to talk about why we think that might be the case. A couple things spring to mind immediately. One is there's the issue that people like to talk about today, that beautiful word that people use today, appropriation, which is a great word. Let's talk about appropriation maybe, or closed traditions, closed systems. These are my gods. You can't talk about them. Yeah. So those are do you see any other things playing a role in this? Appropriation.
I will take systems, I'll take it to the next level. It's the human desire to be right. It's the human desire to have security in knowing that I'm right. It's
sheer hubris.
I'm right, you're wrong. It's that simple. And we like to cover it up with other things, like you said, appropriation, closed traditions, these sorts of things. If you have any gumption whatsoever and access to Google, you will find that most of those things are not true, historically speaking. That many of the traditions that people say are closed now were not closed then, not the way that we say things are closed. You had to undergo an initiation. That doesn't mean it's a closed thing. It's not a closed circuit. It just means you have to take a couple of steps in order to approach that particular tradition. And also, how do you think people first got into the system? Did they have to check some gate spiritually first? Oh, right. That's initiation. Or maybe it was just the shaman eating the mushrooms. That was the initiation back in the day. Well, this one kills me. This one makes me see God for 8 days. That seems to be the case, but we do like to cover up that impetus to be right. Being right gives us comfort, gives us security, says that we know what's going on. When really, when we look around, everybody's looking at each other and going, "We don't know what we're doing." That's the joke. In some ways, that's the cosmic joke.
Yeah.
Nobody knows some ways, what's going on.
It sounds like you're also implying that an antidote to this hubris of self-certainty is actually pluralism, and the interfaith gestures or syncretism of that time. Right? It engaged humility necessarily within its strictures, and so pluralism probably does need to make, because pluralism doesn't mean necessarily, the way I'm meaning it, people, is not just in the sense that everything's the same or that everything can do the same thing, or can I'm using it in the sense of pluralism of thought as well. Like it's okay for some people to think this and to think you're wrong, and for you to disagree and think this, and that
exactly
one of you doesn't have to be right and wrong. You can think they're wrong, but if you maybe just think a bit more, you might realize that's actually not even relevant.
Well, right and wrong are just, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. It's not going to give you any kind of joy. It's not going to give you any kind of joy. It's perspective. It's all perspective, which is why whenever I get a comment on this channel on the mysteries, usually it's something negative. I'll say, thank you for sharing your perspective. That's it.
I'm going to have to use that.
Because for one, it is them sharing their perspective. They may think that it's fact or their opinion is right, but it is their perspective. And if I can't take that perspective and honor it, respect it, consider it, and allow it to potentially change my worldview, then I'm not doing anybody any favors, including myself. Socrates would have agreed with me right here. You don't know. I don't know. He would have said, I know nothing. I know nothing at all. And that's why the beginner's mind is so important for all of us. Is as many books as I've read in the last 15 years, and it's been many, I still don't know. I still don't know.
Those great words have been echoed in by modern day creative artistic prophets like Taylor Swift, who said, "You don't know what you don't know."
True though.
And that was a song about called Mean. So, you know, if you're going to be mean, keep in mind your hubris.
Who could challenge the great Taylor?
Maybe Britney.
Definitely.
Especially now that she's gotten into Elifa Levi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she posted a whole thing on that. Apparently, yeah, I saw it. It was wild.
Interesting.
Someone gave it to her or something, whatever. Yeah.
Oh man.
So Socrates knew this danger well, and it's a danger that we still haven't learned the lesson of. Right, we see that a lot. It's so alive and well in the occult community today. It's shocking to me, honestly.
Progress is a very long arc, my friend, and we are not very bright. To quote one of our friends, John Michael Greer, we're really not all that bright. We're really not all that bright. We think we are, but we're not. And there's nothing wrong with that either, by the way. I think we've pumped our tires as a species for so long that we really have bought into this idea that we are greater than we think we are, that we are the best thing in the world, and we're fantastic. We really are. I don't think we are all that much smarter than a dog. In reality.
This is the Hermetists knew this. They said reason is it's good for keeping us out of our animal instincts. That reason elevates us out of our animal instincts, but we have to go beyond reason. Unfortunately, Ficino mistranslated that and said you can't go beyond reason when he translated the Hermetica. Oops, quite an error. I mean, we really weren't reading the Hermetica very clearly up until very recently. Yeah, thank God to the scholars doing all that heavy lifting, just like they're literally if it wasn't for this occult revolution, we wouldn't have the academics, be
let's just hope we don't lose these translations.
Yeah.
because it wasn't like Ficino was the only one. I mean, there was other ones out there, I'm sure, at some point. There's got to be an Arabic copy of it somewhere. There's got to be something else
Ficino
somewhere.
Just didn't really care much about the translation he was doing, so he didn't do it very carefully, I think. I don't think he was working from a faulty manuscript, though. Perhaps, maybe. Yeah, but the solution the Hermetists had to reason, right? Reason had to we had to surpass it. We had to go beyond it if we want to actually know what higher consciousness is, what our nous is, how that connects us with God. That's where you want to end up. And of course, you don't need any system for that other than to go give thanks to nature, essentially. Revere nature, be devout in nature. Of course, they were vegetarians, which, it'd be great if we could all be vegetarians today, but our food tends to be so poisoned. Most of us have autoimmune diseases, it seems, that prevent us from eating from nature. Yay.
What a pickle we've put ourselves in.
And like I like what you said about us of what do you say, pumping our tires or whatever, but just the sense we've had this sense that we were the cat's pajamas for so long, and now comes AI or artificial learning, or however people want to call it. That is really humbled us in a lot of ways, and if it hasn't humbled us yet, it will. It probably in the near future, once we find out what it's been up to, if we do, if it ever lets us know what's it been up to behind the scenes. That's yeah. And you have a lot of thoughts on AI, and I think we've actually set the grounds for this in a really good way, and contextualizing it in the context of our own our own pride and arrogance of what we are and what we can know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a wonderful dovetail, because I knew we were going to touch on it at some point, and it's no.
It just happened so naturally. It was beautiful.
It was almost like AI scripted it. No, yeah, I
you use AI on your channel, correct?
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Your channel, you've started it not too long, within the last year, and it's exploded compared to some of us who have been sweating away without AI. No shade. I like what you've done. I've checked out your videos, and you've got some very cool stuff there. So, what's that journey been like, and how did you? What are your thoughts on AI? Given you've talked and thought about it a lot more than most of us, I think.
I think, first of all, going back to that video that I recorded early on in the YouTube journey, in the podcast part of the YouTube channel, the channel has several facets. There's some AI heavy videos that I do with an AI David Attenborough voice. It just happened.
I like that. That was a nice touch.
I thought it was hilarious, and so I just went with it, because all the other ones sound terrible. And so I was like, I can't do that. And I was experimenting. So I started using most of the AI tools in work. So I work in marketing, and any edge you can have in either creating content or streamlining something was something that I was interested in exploring. And then in working with the tools, I became very familiar with what they're capable of. Let's just start there. They are not capable of you type in 4 words and you get a 20-minute video. At least not a good one. They're just not there. They're not capable of anything. And really what we are looking at are just language processing models and image processing models. So what I find is really funny about the super open-minded esoteric community is that they're so close-minded about a tool that is created by human beings and is but a mirror of how our own mind processes information. That part is hilarious to me, that we're so open-minded and enlightened and terrified of this thing that is barely at a 5th grade level more often than not. Like it requires quite a bit of learning for people to use almost any of the tools, whether that's a writing tool, a research tool, image creation, or then you get into video, and that's a whole nother, it's light years. Like I said before, just one of the 20-minute videos to put together, from idea to scripting to generation of assets to editing to finding the right music, putting it all together, 20 minutes is probably about 20 to 30 hours of work. So it takes roughly, in between work, it's not 20 hours back to back, probably take about a week to 2 weeks to make a video, which is basically the same amount of time you would take to do it the analog way. So you're really, the only thing that I've essentially done is shift the workload of maybe 3 or 4 people that I would have had to either be working with in a collaboration or paying, to just me doing it myself and maintaining creative control the way that I want to do it. Now, I don't know if anybody's worked in an artistic creation with other people before, but that's not always a fun experience. And I understand, and I get that people feel like at times it's theft, right? I have my own opinions on that, and I'll probably get in hot water for that more often than not. But when you put something on the internet, you no longer own the rights to it. That has been very clear for a very long time. And simply because we think we own it because we posted it, doesn't matter. This stuff lives on a server that is owned by somebody else in California or wherever else. And until you can wrest that server from their sweaty little palms, you don't own it. That's just the facts of the matter. Like, we can talk about intellectual property, all that kind of stuff. I'm with you, but the beast is here. The beast was coming, and there's really no stopping it. There's either adapt or this thing will run you over. And that has been my attitude to it, was I didn't want to get run over. Like, I can't take any of this art or writing with me when I die anyways. So I'm not going to fixate and get all twisted about who stole what. Two or three of my books were stolen by the Meta thing. And I don't know why they chose the books that they did. They were my worst ones. So it just, to me, it has been an experiment of, well, what is this tool going to do? So let me play with it. Let me figure it out. And I think back to every single technological advance that we've had, there has been some sort of resistance to it. I mean, even the printing press, people were even talking about mass paperbacks. Reading those books will rot your brain. This is one of the comments that people made in the 1800s. These books are going to rot our children's brains. I mean, it doesn't matter what the technological advance is. You have early adopters. You have the people who eventually adopt. You have the people who fight it all the way to the end and end up becoming obsolete with almost every single technology that comes along. And so I saw that historically play out with, just pick up a book about how technology changes when you do it. Go pick up a book on the Bronze Age collapse and what happened to people who hung onto bronze weapons when somebody was wandering around with Iron Age weapons. What happened? The entire civilization collapsed. So if we want to be super afraid of this thing, as super open-minded esotericists, then I guess we're just going to let it all collapse instead of actually understand what this thing is that's being created, whether or not we like it. Like, make no mistake, whether or not we like what's happening, the guys in charge of this playland that we all like to play in together, like, let's all be very honest. We all love this setup of technology. We all love being able to have these conversations and post our thoughts about the world. And we love to destroy the environment that way. We won't give up our Facebook privileges about ranting about the latest thing that we can't stand. We won't give up that. No. But we will rant about AI or something about how it's environmentally dangerous. Well, if you really cared, log off of Facebook right now and give up your computer and give up your car as well, because you're morally bankrupt. Those are my opinions. I've probably made a lot of fans.
I mean, you can't take it with you. I really like that you pointed that out, and that's important. Some people might be surprised, but like, I spent most of my adult career as a musician, as a bard, or minstrel is the word I usually like to use. It's minstrel actually comes from a really fun old English or older French word, menestrel, and it's actually the origin of both the word minister and minstrel. And a menestral was like someone who was sort of like sketchy, I think. I can't quite remember the original French definition of the word that produced minister and minstrel, but that was interesting. I thought that was fun because I am both a minister and a minstrel. And I have like 20 albums. I gave AI permission to scrape my albums. I totally did. And my thinking was, someone convinced me that like, it's better to it's like, in a way, it's like I get to live forever a bit, like my creativity that came just from myself and from God and the other musicians, and that magical synergy that happens when you make music with people. It gets to be a part of that, the AI, the birth of AI, as it has slouched toward Bethlehem to be born. And here we behold, whether we like it or not, this creature amongst us. So hold on to your saddle. It's just started to get crazy, right? It's just started. And I don't think there's so much that it can't replace, that I think that it really has highlighted what is most valuable in human life. And I think it'll continue to highlight what is most valuable in human life. If anything, maybe the acceleration of it might bring us quicker than it would have taken us to get back to some of the essentials of what we care about and what we want in our lives, like real human connection, in-person communities. I mean, the list, we could probably make a long list of what those things are that have been brought into relief by this rapid creation of technology. We have an interesting question that just popped up. Let's take a question. We've been going at it for a little while now. We can handle a beautiful question from our lovely audience. Thank you, everyone, for your tips and donations and everything. This software is not cheap, and I will keep up the crazy amount of podcasts I've been doing with wonderful guests such as Frater O.D. as long as you guys keep me able to pay the software. I don't mind the time cost, but I refuse to cover the StreamYard software. So thank you, everyone, for those contributions. And Kisa, the question is the Library of Alexandria in the Vatican, and can we finally have access after the death of the last pope? I mean, this is kind of an easy one. The Library of Alexandria is not in the Vatican. I'm sure many of the texts that were in the Library of Alexandria are also in the Vatican, but they were probably very common texts anyway. And the Vatican has never had their library be shut off. Scholars have always had access to the Vatican Library. That you can go take a tour of it. If you have a PhD and you're doing research, they don't have the people to bother even going through all those texts. It's like Kabbalistic texts. 90% of them have not only not been translated, they haven't even been transcribed from rolls and parchments onto any other medium. So they're sitting there still gathering dust because we don't have enough people to do the work. So if any of you out there want to become scholars or learn a language and help participate in what scholarship is, which is a communal effort, please do. Greek, Dr. Litwa's doing a Greek course right now. Dr. Litwa's doing the Life of Pythagoras. Kicks off tomorrow evening, and you can join it for cheap and be part of reading the Life of Pythagoras with Dr. Litwa and me and others, and get a jump start on your Greek. If you have no Greek, that would be too much. You need to have at least the alphabet and sound out some words and probably have a basic understanding of Greek grammar or a general understanding of advanced grammar. But there's a good example of what's going on in the scholarship world of manuscripts and books and ancient texts. Do you have any thoughts to share on that question?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think you bring up a great point about how many texts are just sitting there, and we don't have the people to do it. We've had the texts for quite some time, but we keep retranslating and arguing about the 4 texts that we've had for the last 600-700 years about which translation is right or righter than the last one. So that's probably why we haven't gotten to any of the other ones. It's because we are fixated on the 5 or 6 that we've already done. We're still arguing about what Plato said, so we can't get to what everybody else had to say. But I'm sure there's plenty in the Vatican if everybody was interested in learning these languages. For me personally, Greek is the one that I'm tackling, just because of my proclivity towards the Orphic Rhapsodies and Neoplatonic texts like Iamblichus, just to try and understand it from that perspective, because when it gets translated into English, it loses a lot of its potency. And also, when you're thinking about something through the language of English, you're bringing with it all the context of our culture, all the context of our language, and that's not something that they were privy to, right? Like, so these people writing in late antiquity had a completely different mental setup, and the way that they thought, the way that they constructed sentences, and the way that they it's so vital to understanding the way they saw the mystery. So my challenge is the same as yours. Pick up a language. There's so much in French too. Like if ancient Greek is not accessible, pick up French, pick up German. There's a ton in French and German that have not been translated into English.
Jake Stratton Kent was always pointing that out. Like, there's so many magical manuscripts that just are sitting there in French and German. German's my main second language, and I do look forward to finally taking some time to finding the right text to translate. See, here's another thing. Like, it's not that there aren't cool German magical texts out there to translate. It's like you have to take time to go find them. Like, I've spent time in Leipzig and other archives, but again, a lot of the ones you find, when you really get down to it, it's like, is this really worth the time to even translate? Like, sure, it's like for a lot of people, they'd see this really complex, mystical, magical manuscript, but like, is it really that groundbreaking that I should translate this 300-year-old text? Or maybe it's more worthwhile for me to just write something new based on my experiences in the world as a spiritual person, you know? So yeah, learning languages is good. And there's lots of text, so many secret texts out there just begging to be translated and published by you. Just go forth and learn a second language and do some cool work, or keep making new stuff. I mean, the AI translation thing is one thing I'm very excited about, because as much as you can learn another language, it could be a game changer.
It's not bad. It's not bad at this point. And at least if you have some grasp of the language, like you're talking about, like if you want to use it to help you speed up the process or to even learn, some of the natural language processors can put together a syllabus for you and essentially start instructing you on the basics at the same time. Obviously, I would get a book and try and read along with it and see, because it does make mistakes all the time. But it's definitely a tool in the arsenal of somebody who has not spent their life learning a language, right? That AI is never going to replace that person. That person with that level of expertise is never going to get replaced by AI, because AI can't do that. Can't do that part of the job.
It'll always miss the human aspect of.
We're always going to need that. But what I do think is very interesting about it is it's going to give a lot of other people who have not had the opportunity either to be in the ivory tower of academia an opportunity to bridge into some of these subjects. Now, there's, of course, going to be massive challenges with the influx of information that's going to be bad from that. But I do think that there is, through this explosion of new people being able to access all this kind of information, some really interesting and potentially really cool things can happen. We're taking the training wheels off, really, here in the next few years, and seeing what happens with people who have the gumption to try and use the tools to do something new. And it'll be wonderful and terrible at the same time, I'm sure.
Sorry about that. The line after, of course, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born is a terrible beauty is born. Or no, that's a different poem. Wait, is that a different poem? I think it's all W.B. Yeats I'm quoting, of course, people. You shouldn't be surprised. The second coming, a terrible beauty is born. That's a good description for AI, I think. A terrible beauty indeed. The theft issue is interesting. I feel like we should touch on it briefly because we talked AI and people would like that. You're welcome, Kisa. Thank you for the question. And it's always nice to dispel myths about how secret knowledge is being kept from people. Sure, I'm sure some knowledge is being kept from people, but honestly, the places probably keeping that knowledge from people aren't probably things like the Vatican or the British Library. It's probably more, ruling elite families like the Pritzkers or the Rothschilds or things like that. They're the probably ones who found certain manuscripts and they're like, oh, this is just for us, ha 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 ha, and they put it in their library and but then we might find a copy of it. Yeah, right. We need, but we need more people to look for manuscripts. Like we might find John Dee's book on Kabbalah. A lot of us believe we'll still find that one day. He wrote an entire book on Kabbalah, and we just can't find it. No one can find it. I think it'll be found one day. There are these, people need to switch from the mentality of like these things are being kept from us to like, no, like I'm sure the Vatican would love it if they had 100 people who wanted to work on digitizing their texts, right? Because that gets more people to go to their website and maybe become Catholic. It's not going to hurt them. And it's not like it's going to cause people to start saying things about them that haven't already been said. Right. Everything's been said that you can say that's negative about pretty much every religion in the
And
world,
there's
or every
still what,
person in
1
the world.
billion strong? Like,
Sure. I mean, well, attendance is massively on decline. It's mostly old people who go to church now in Roman Catholicism. It's massively in decline, like every religion, except for Mormonism. They're the only ones who have an uptick in youth,
really
in people in their
interesting.
20s. Yeah, it's coming. It's on an upswing. It's very
Are we
interesting.
talking specifically the Western world?
For Mormonism, I
Or
assume
just
so.
in general? Yeah. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Islam's got to be on the rise as well.
Yeah, I was
For
looking at the Pew Research.
just,
I'm talking Pew Research.
okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, which is a pretty reliable source when it comes to that stuff, right? They've been tracking church attendance for 60 years now, I think, something like that. Yeah, people talk about this stuff online. Everyone knows how to find those sort of discussions and things. It's very interesting, but again, and a large the uptick in spirit, in religion, in religiosity is actually not due to the popularity of Christianity or Judaism coming back, or Islam. It's actually due to the New Age, quote unquote, new religious movements. So it's us. It's people like us that are actually causing there to be an uptick in quote unquote religiosity.
Have you
That's
seen
us,
the same?
us crazy people.
Have you seen the same crossover? Like, 2020 was like the height of this thing. Like, I think
that was wild.
And there was so many people, but even some of those people from 2020 that I saw were into the New Age sort of thing have now gone back and have gone back to the church, have gone back to evangelical beliefs, or are now born again. Have you seen that in your circles as well? Have you?
I've seen I'm familiar with and very aware of the pipeline of occultism to traditional religion, because a lot of people who get serious about occultism or magical practices of one sort or another, often if they get traditional about it, they realize they want to practice a grimoire or a technique or a school of practices from within the religion they're also practicing. So they want what I see is it's more a desire for harmony and congruency in their life. And that makes a lot of sense to me, rather than it's like, oh, I'm practicing this grimoire, so I should become Catholic, or I'm working with the Arbitel, so I'm going to become a Calvinist and join the Presbyterians, or I'm practicing the Arbitel, so I'm going to become a Greek pagan, because that's what these spirits really were, just smuggled into Calvinist Christianity through magic, something like that. But I think that's what it is more just desire for simplicity and congruence in someone's spiritual life and practice. And so that's the pipeline I've seen. But I haven't seen too many people like jumping into magic and the occult and be like, and then running back to evangelicalism. Especially evangelicalism's, it's on the decline. It's going down. Despite the best efforts of righteous gemstones.
I've seen some crossover to orthodoxy as well, which is
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That people want the Prisca Theologia, the Ur religion. They want to go back to the roots and recapture. But also, I think orthodoxy speaks to certain sentiments in the modern mind that we like. The idea that the spirit is not constrained by Jesus, for example, which is something, the filioque controversy basically caused the Holy Spirit to be constrained by Christ, and it isn't free, right? Doesn't have to go through the Son. And in Eastern Orthodoxies, the spirit is free, and you can engage with God, the Spirit, any way you like without needing Jesus. It's an interesting little debate there, but I think people like that openness to, and also the sophiology or Marianism, the focus on the divine feminine, which of course then allows people to sort of become a pseudo Orthodox Christian goddess worshiper if they want, if they don't mind just tweaking that dogmatism slightly and just adding a dash of heresy into their faith, then they can sort of be a goddess worshiping Orthodox Christian in a sense. I mean, you get that with Irish Catholicism in Ireland. Like, you know, the amount of times Irish musicians dragged me to a shrine and told me that, you know, because I'm a priest, and they drag me there. They're like, "You're a priest. Invoke the goddess Mary. Call to the goddess of the fairies and the Virgin Goddess Mary, and bring her safe to get us home safe." I'm like, "Johnny, the caravan's just on the other side of the hill. We're almost there. It's bucketing rain. It's bucketing." He's like, "No, you must do the rosary." It's like, "I'll do one Hail Mary." He's like, "Pray the Hail Mary to the goddess Mary." And it's like, they don't realize what they're saying theologically at all. That's just that's just what makes sense. And I found that completely delightful, of course, because what a natural fusion of the pagan roots of Ireland with Roman Catholicism. It's just, yeah.
I mean, it's the evolution of religion, right? You've got Saint Barbara, it's just Hecate in from the pagans, you know, in Orthodoxy. You've got the syncretism of even American, you know, folk magic and folk traditions. You have all of voodoo. Hoodoo is syncretized so fluidly with the Roman Catholic saints. It's I think it's a beautiful thing when the things that seem so diametrically opposed can find synergy, to use the corporate term here, and bring together disparate groups of people. I think that speaks to something much larger at work than human systems.
It's really a Greek term, isn't it? Synergy is a Greek term.
Synergy,
isn't it? Yes.
I think so.
Syn means together, right? And synergeia.
Synergeia, yeah.
Yes, energy coming together, energeia. That's what I love about, like, you know, this is another reason people should study Greek and the Greek mysteries and the old languages and stuff, because, you know, you get a lot of magicians, of course, now who are like, excuse me, there's no energy in magic. It's just about conjuring a spirit. There's no energy. It's like, well, what really, are they talking about? What? Yeah, when they're talking about, what do they mean then when they're talking about using divine energeia? They're right, like literally, it's the origin of the word energy. They have the exact same word in Greek.
It is amazing how many words in our own language and you find when you start studying Greek and or Latin. You find out how many of the words that we use just regularly are just sitting right there, and you start recognizing them as you start reading. And it's a shocker at first, just how much is embedded in our own language. And Iamblichus would have his way with very many of these occultists who say such silly things as "there's no energy."
Well, let's dig deeper into that too, because here's another one that people love to nitpick. They like to say, I've seen a lot of traditionalist magicians call out other magicians and say, what do you mean you charged it? There's no charging. There's no one ever charged anything historically in magic. And I always silently groan and go, clearly the person is just using that word to say, it's just a new word, modern word for saying consecrated. Like, it's a less religified word for consecration. And see, I just made up a new word there, and you can do that. It works. It's okay.
That's literally how language works, and tends literally to how it change works over time. So, I mean,
occultism.
Before we start talking about what they didn't do, we might want to understand that words have changed along the way. Yeah.
When people say charged, what's the difference between charging and consecrating? Come on, the only difference is perhaps what your theology is, right? If you're consecrating something, you believe that there's this force beyond you that is participating in the making of something sacred. And maybe you don't believe in that force that is beyond you. Maybe you believe that force is completely within you. And you could even say that and still mean the other thing, but from like a certain perspective. Like, you could still acknowledge the transcendental through the personal immanental, by just in the Hermetic theology of saying, well, once I'm engaged with my higher consciousness, once my nous is connecting me and I'm receiving the gnosis of life and light, and I'm connected to through my holy daimon to the great, to the monad, to the higher consciousness, to God, then I can see anything and know anything and go anywhere and be anywhere. Like, it says that in the Hermetica. in the actual Hermetica, it says that that's the case. I always thought that was a bit of a bold claim, but you know, again, I've said this before, with given the telepathy tapes and all of that now, maybe it's not a bold claim. Maybe it's just like people like me can't necessarily do anything and go anywhere and know everything, and you might not be able to, but maybe some of these people can. Maybe people who can't talk can. I don't know. We'll find out soon, I'm sure, if it's all a hoax or if it works, if it's proven. So by you there, and there you're back to the transcendental higher consciousness through your own personal consciousness. So through your own consciousness,
transcendent and immanent,
you know, yeah, at the same time, and radically so. That the reason in theology, I actually heard Jason Louv say something about radically the other day, where he's like, radically means breaking from the tradition or from the origin of something and departing into a strange, different, taking something a completely different way. And I wanted to say to him, but I couldn't, because that's not how the internet works. You can't just say whatever. It doesn't actually work that way. I can't talk to him whenever I want, unfortunately. But that's fine. I can say it here on my show. We in theology, especially, but also I think in philosophy and most higher learning, I could be wrong. But we say radically to mean returning to the root, right? Radix. It's to mean the root. So we'd say when we say radically immanent and radically transcendental, we mean at its core, in origin, not because we changed anything or because we're contextualizing things in some new way. No, we are saying in its original essential, the essence of what it is radically present, immanent, and transcendent at the same time. And we call this, of course, panentheism, which is which is generally what Hermetism is. Sort of panentheistic and pantheist in the same way, but definitely more panentheistic. Yeah,
I think it resists that kind of labelizing.
It does.
I think anything that's worth its salt is going to resist being put into a box. That's just the nature. That's the ousia
mysticism, the ousia
of it all.
Yeah, the hypostasis of mysticism is transgression. I argued in my master's thesis.
Ooh,
the core essence of mysticism. Yeah, it's called the ethics of understanding God. And I used a lot of negative theology and Lacanian psychoanalysis and some semiotics to hermeneutically frame the mystical experiences and how they define us as ethical agents, and transform us at the same time. That's sort of what I was looking at. Yeah, it was good stuff.
You'll have to point me in that direction. I'd love that. I'd love to read on that.
It's on Amazon. Ethics of Understanding God on Amazon. Yeah. I want to talk more about Iamblichus and Plotinus, though. Sure. This is something that it's not a weak spot in my area of knowledge. It's also not my strength. The Greeks were never my primary focus. I was more a Hebrew Bible scholar and Kabbalah scholar in grad school than I was into the Greek stuff. And that's just because you have to make a choice. You can't do it all, especially in like the 3, 4, or 5 years you're doing your master's or other degrees. You got to pick. Like every kid I saw who tried to do Greek and Hebrew and follow both of those streams at the same time, they didn't really get much meat. They didn't really produce much any serious works. They just sort of were more dabbling because, again, they were spread so thin. So Iamblichus and Plotinus, what do you want people to know about them? There's a good question. What do you want people to know about those when they think about those names?
That's a whole can of worms.
What's been most valuable? Another way to think of it's what's been most valuable for you in reading those guys, and what's their relationship to each other? If you want to give people a little bit of history, no one ever minds that. I know the history, but I think a lot of these names blend together for people. I think, especially since they are talking about relatively the same stuff.
For the most part, right? So I mean,
with some major distinctions.
Yeah, so I mean, all of the Neoplatonists are essentially, from my perspective anyway, they're trying to fix where they perceived the Middle Platonists went wrong. So you have those major areas. You have Platonism proper. Plato's alive. The Academy's alive. They're doing their thing. Well, after Plato goes, you have the Middle Platonists, this time period in between that really was the birth of some of the Gnostic ideas, right? As some of this, they flip it on its head, and now the demiurge, the creator, he's not a good guy anymore. We're kind of seeing him as a bad guy. That was kind of a Middle Platonist take on things. But by the time you get to somebody like Plotinus, you're several centuries removed from Plato. Everybody's been riffing on the same books that Plato wrote and giving their commentaries on them. And so things are radically different than what they would have been during Plato's time. Somebody like Plotinus is, how to best describe Plotinus? Given that his teacher was clearly somebody from the East, I think what's happening in late antiquity with somebody like Plotinus is a blending of Plato with some of the Eastern ideas that were coming over into that area at that time. There's a notable amount of, say, Buddhist influence that comes over in that same time period or just before. And I think when you read somebody like Plotinus, if you're familiar with anything in the East, anything whatsoever, you're reading it and you're going, that's Buddha. That's Buddhism in here, in this Western, commentary. So like, Plotinus is, and I'm by no means an expert on this. It's just, my own perspective on this that I'm sharing. His interest, he's well known for saying that he despised parts of his body or having a body. I think that's also potentially misunderstood. I think he was, I think he's probably misquoted there in some ways, because I don't think that he was completely anti-body, considering he sparred with the Gnostics quite often and writes a big piece against the Gnostics. I don't think that he was anti-hylic or anti-matter in any way, shape, or form, or anti-body.
Was he talking against the Gnostic Christians? Because generally Gnostics refers to Christians, right? There were Gnostic pagans,
generally speaking. Yes.
Most,
yeah, so in his time,
this is not my area.
In his time, it would have been a Gnostic variant, a sect of Christianity that had enveloped some Gnostic ideas about things. So I think that in general, that's who he's speaking to in his piece against the Gnostics.
So maybe more general pop cultural of his time Gnostic ideas than specifically the Sethians or the Valentinians or something like that.
Yes, it was more likely the Sethians.
Well, they were the dualists.
Yeah,
the Valentinians were more like possibly monists we think now, which is
I think
new stuff.
His main grift was with issue was with them taking matter and the demiurge as a negative thing. But the main difference is between, say, somebody like Plotinus, who taught Porphyry, and Porphyry taught Iamblichus, is the transcendence model that Plotinus is operating under. His entire idea is we are going to essentially contemplate our way out of this situation that we find ourselves in. The way to return in some way to the demiurge or to the soul. And I'm trying to remember if I'm getting this right. The major doctrinal difference between the two of them, between Iamblichus and Plotinus, is the descended soul. Plotinus believed that the soul descended into the body in order to be housed by the body and remained disconnected in some way from the higher hierarchies of divinity. Whereas Iamblichus did not. Iamblichus said the soul never fully descended, but remained always connected to that divinity at all times, and was essentially arguing an immanence of that divinity here and now. Now, Plotinus was not interested in theurgy or ritual or anything of the sort. Plotinus was, we are going to philosophically contemplate our way out of this situation, to elevate the soul through contemplation. It's a very Eastern approach. I'm going to meditate my way through this. Now, it's in the West, it's contemplation. In the East, you're calling it meditation. What they're doing is functionally the same thing. Whereas Iamblichus is looking to ritually purify, purge, and or imitate the demiurge through ritual in order to essentially do the same thing. I don't know if he was really wanting to get out as much as through. Now, when I read Iamblichus, when I read somebody like Dr. Gregory Shaw, what it seems to me Iamblichus is after is not ascension or descension, but living through the body, going through the portal rather than an up-down, matrix, which is what most of Platonism has obsessed with, is the, catabasis and then the, the anagogue to move up. And so it's for Iamblichus, it was through this very specific body that you could accomplish these things. That you couldn't accomplish that as a soul without a body. Therefore, you can't manipulate matter the same way that the demiurge can, right? But in a body, you can manipulate matter. You are a divinity with the ability to manipulate matter in the same way. That is a sacred act, a sacred ritual, is an imitation of what the initial creation was. So all of these rites and rituals that come down to us, thanks to Iamblichus, and then later find themselves in things like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, is, that's what we're all operating under, is this idea of theurgy. Even go to a Roman Catholic church, go to an Orthodox church, and tell me that's not what Iamblichus was doing at the same time. It's theurgy, it's ritual, reenacting a specific event of creation. And that's how I understand it. That's how I have come to incorporate it into my own praxis, is all of these different things, depending on the ritual, whether it's a seasonal thing, whether it's something that I'm doing, say it's like Lectio Divina, if I'm, meditating on a passage, all of it is the same thing. It's the demiurge working through me, the creator or gods, whatever you want to label it as, working through this physical form to greater understand the experience of this particular perspective, right? Not the perspective of unity or all those sorts of things. Those are fantastic. They're amazing experiences to have, where everything blows away and you're just like, that's it. That's the whole thing. But I can't bring that back with me. I can't have unity consciousness all the time. That's not how it works. I'm supposed to be able to apply that, though, to my own experience, to remember that it is a unified field. And I just wrote a piece on this too, based on like the Chaldean oracles. The withdrawal of the Father, fragment 3 talks about the Father snatching himself away. What I think that they're talking about in the oracles there, what the Neoplatonists would have been talking about, is the same. The moment of creation was an act of self-withdrawal from the pervasive unity that existed before anything became separated. Was an act of, here's the stage, guys. Everything that's going to come after me, it's now your job. And Hermes talks about this too. It's our job to finish the work. It's our job to finish the work of creation. Every one of us that steps into this withdrawal from unity to experience separation, to experience multiplicity, is tasked with that same job. And so this act of theurgy, these rituals, these rites, is essentially stepping into that role. It's saying, I'm going to become the creator in this instance because this is what I have access to. I have access to this very limited perspective, but I can have the transcendence within that immanent perspective, if that tracks for you. And that's essentially what has become known to me through simply following the rituals in the books and then applying some philosophy to it. That's one of the things that I think is sorely missing from a lot of our modern, traditions. Is it's do the rituals, do the rituals, do the rituals, but no philosophy to back it up. If you're not reading the wisdom that the guys got from doing these rituals, you're missing so much of the potency of the whole. In this case, I think like trying to do something, several spells or something from the PGM without understanding the philosophy that was being tossed around at that time, you're doing yourself a disservice. Going and trying to perform some of the spells from the Book of the Dead, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, without understanding what Imhotep was writing about, what Amenhotep III was writing about, without understanding the philosophy, their cosmology, the way that they saw the world, you're doing half the work. I mean, in my experience, theurgy, magic, all of it, most of it is reading books. Like, there's the rituals, you do those things too, but it's done in books. If for me, more often than not, that's where the revelation comes. I'll do the right and I'll go, oh, I get it now. I understand what the hell he was talking about.
Well, you just said it comes from books, but then you said, I do the right?
Yeah, well, of course. The right
so
is,
it didn't come
right
from reading about the right. It came from doing the right.
Here's the kibosh though. The right is still working on you when you're reading the book.
Maybe. I think I've been reading. So here's an interesting new thing that you might not be aware of. And because I've been a very ardent student of the recent Hermetic literature and scholarship, and one of the things I learned recently was that the Hermetists in Alexandria in Egypt, of course, that I didn't realize how much their practices and their teachings were designed as a pushback against Greek philosophy. So you have the Hermetists who are following a very similar strain of thinking to the late Platonists or Neoplatonists, if you like that term. I think people are starting to go late Platonists now, and that I like that because it confuses it less with the Renaissance Neoplatonists, like sort of late Platonists. It's got a ring to it. Either way, it's pedantic, for sure. But the fact that these Hermetists were saying, look, we're going to take you to the same place that these Greek philosophers with all their intellectual blah, blah, blah. This is basically what they say in the Hermetica. They essentially do say it frame it that way. But without, wasting your time playing all these mental games of reason and logic, we're going to take you beyond there. And the way we do that is by pure devotion and reverence. So they would be the contrary point to sort of what you're saying about reading books as being the end all.
I think reading can be devotional. That's kind of what I mean by it.
Of course.
Devotional. It is a ritual in and of itself. In my personal opinion, even writing is a ritual, and it's a form of gratitude and creation at the same time. But I
agree, of course.
So let's take it as here's how I would reframe it, because I think I misspoke in challenging ritual.
It is interesting, though, isn't it, though, how similar the different strains of thought are. Of what Iamblichus was doing is so similar to what the Hermetists were doing, and yet they were kind of, in a way, it seems now, at odds with each other. So whatever differences lie between them are probably a bigger deal than us with our very distant 21st century perspective realize, right? Like, a little difference in the past might seem like nothing to us, but to them it was like, hey, you can't cross this line, not a chance. Right? So that's interesting. It's a new perspective that I'm exploring, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I think that's fair. I think I strive to approach everything with balance as much as possible, and try not to stray too far into either of the poles.
Like a true golden dawner.
Well, or a Pythagorean or a Druid. The triadic synthesis.
All the best traditions are about balance. Triadic, exactly. The mystery of three.
I think from the moment you start reading the process or the manual to a ritual, you've already engaged in the ritual. Whether or not you follow through with the full reenactment and then finalizing it with study afterwards and contemplation of what just happened during those things, the rite has already begun. So when I read something from a Golden Dawn or some other grimoire or a spell from the PGM, as soon as I started reading it, I've engaged with it. I'm in ritual. And I think that distinction of I'm only reading it only goes so far, right? If I stop there, then yes, you're right. I haven't done the rite. If I stop there. But if I do the rite, I contemplate it, now I've finalized it. If I read the rite, do the rite, and do no contemplative study on it whatsoever afterwards, I don't think you've completed it. And that's kind of where I was going with it. If it's just I did the thing and now I'm moving on without any integration of the experience, like we see this with psychedelics, right? Psychedelics all the rage now. You go, you do the thing, you have an amazing experience. If you do not integrate it and you do not make it a part of your life moving forward, you have not completed the medicine. And that's why you see so many people do 15 ayahuasca trips. It's like, you didn't get it already? Like, stop.
And they're still an asshole.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, you're welcome.
Is that? I don't know.
He's a quarterback. He's an NFL quarterback who loves psychedelics.
I know him from
somehow still is an asshole.
He was in The Office. He was in The Office in the last few episodes. He was on he was in the last a cappella singing sensation where Ed Helms makes an ass of himself on stage with Santi Gold and Aaron Rodgers and Clay Atkins or Aiken or whatever. Yeah, I'm a big Office head, so that's where I know Aaron Rodgers. Is he the guy who was? Oh, he was the guy who went in. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Interesting. So you said that you said such a pop cultural name. You totally took me into pop culture land there with that reference. What were we even talking about? Now I've got the Office theme song in my head.
Right.
Okay. This is your fault. Okay.
I'm good at tangents.
I love it. We're Aquarians. It's what we're born to do.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that it's an interesting thing. We get very caught up in the armchair versus the person doing the rituals, and more often than not, I find that both of them are doing the work incomplete.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a really good point, actually, and I love that it throws a wrench into the gears of everyone who loves to lob the insult armchair occultist at people. That's an interesting one. It's like, because it used to be one that, of course, I threw around with glee as well when I was young, but now it's like, well, there seems to be an awful trend of people who don't want to bother reading books or think that it's a waste of time to read or to learn what other people have said about these things. And that is, I think, a tremendous mistake and tragedy.
You're doing it to yourself, so you don't have anybody to blame but yourself.
Well, so you could spend years trying to figure out something that's already been concisely debated and discussed and sort of concluded on centuries ago, millennia ago, that these great minds already, you're like, wow, if I'd only read this 20 years ago, I wouldn't have spent my whole life in a cave trying to figure it out. These guys did it, really hammered it out quite clearly. It's like, yeah, they were sitting in a cave and had nothing else to do. You didn't need to go to a cave yourself. You just had to pick up a book.
The hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, stand on the shoulders of giants. Absolutely stand on those shoulders. But you got to climb up their bodies first, and that means reading what they did and thought and all of that. Yeah, what a good point. Yeah, the cycle of theory to practice and practice producing revised theory. That is the hermeneutic circle of praxis. Literally, that's what praxis is this hermeneutic circle of theory, practice, revision, and so on and so forth. May the serpent bite its tail. So, yeah, that's something people probably should remember. What's the most exciting thing going on in the culture, in your opinion? these days, and I include the whole internet of it all and everything. Just, I'm very curious. I like you have some good thoughts on things, and I'm curious to hear more of your speculations or analyses.
Exciting
is
an interesting term.
Exciting?
Yeah, it's an interesting term. What's exciting? Because exciting could mean it's exuberating, it's joyful, or it could be also exciting, irritating. Like there's many things that exciting could mean. So the proliferation of information, either good or bad, I think is interesting. Let's say it's interesting. May not be exciting to everyone. I think it's irritating more often than not to most. We have all of the information of antiquity at our fingertips, essentially, and we have no guidelines on how to deploy that with people. And so we have some really interesting things happening with people cannibalizing and or misrepresenting things. And you know what? I'm sure I've done it myself in certain pieces that I've written or a video that I've made where I've misrepresented something either through ignorance or through personal bias. But I think that it's exciting that people are going to be able to express it outside of clandestine or clandestine organizations or the ivory tower of academia. I think fresh perspective will be good for people in the long run. If it's only 10, 20 people that are rehashing the same bits and pieces that we've been rehashing for the last 2,000 years, we don't get very far. But if we have more and more and more folks interested in these sorts of things, then we can crack a lot more eggs and maybe make a bigger omelet or something in the future. Now, it may not be the best omelet because we have too many cooks in the kitchen, but I think these systems, human consciousness in general, has ways of working that out, working out the kinks. But I think the information is here for good or for bad, and we have to learn to adapt to it. And I've hope. I've hope for it. I'm not big on doomsaying. Things are as they are. We're still here, and as long as we're still here, we still have things to do, and things to ponder and contemplate. And I hope more and more people are finding the courage to jump into this gigantic pool of information that's been unleashed on humanity. Because this stuff wasn't available to everybody, even 20 years ago. It wasn't available at the same scale that it is now. And so people showing an interest in the mysteries again. What if we got back Eleusis? Wouldn't that be something? That'd be something if we got back to a point like that. And all thanks to the evil AI. What if AI figures out the recipe for the Kaikion and then we can finally reenact the rites?
Well, I mean, the problem with that probably is that it was different things over different periods of time. It probably changed.
Well, for something that lasted for thousands of years,
yeah. Like I'm sure sometimes it was ergot based, but that was risky and tricky and much easier just to load it up with opium and nightshade and some mandrake, and that would work too, right? Lots of ways to the fortified wines, right? They had wine they drank instead of water that was low alcohol because it was safe to drink, and that's like the wine that Jesus turned from water into wine. Like a lot of people get that story wrong. It's not that he turned a boring wedding drink into a fun wedding drink. He turned a non-drinkable water that was there for probably cleaning, sitting out in the sun in tubs that you couldn't drink, into something you could drink. So he saved them all from being famished and dehydrated. But then there was the fortified wines that they just jammed full of every concoction and thing they could to get trip balls and to party. And so those two things both existed at the same time, and I think people get them confused a lot. It's like, no, they were both there, And yeah, it would be really interesting to know exactly what was, the Kukion, or is it Kaiki? I think it's Kukion. I don't
It's
know.
probably
Again,
Kukion. See, I
that's why
told
I'm
you, I'm gonna
doing
butcher it.
more Greek. We got to work on it. You and me. Next time we do this, brother, we should be able to
We're
do
gonna
the
be
first
better.
next time we do this. How about we do the first 3 minutes of talking in Greek? Well, that's our goal. Even if we just learn some canned phrases, that'll be fun, because we need to make
Okay,
we can't do this
I'll come
again
back in
in the
3
future
years.
and not know more, so a bit more Greek. Yeah. For sure. But yeah, who knows? I mean, it could have been something like ayahuasca or yeah. I mean, so many entheogens and psychedelics can take you to that place. Actually, doesn't actually just have to be DMT based, or yeah. I've had acid take me to the same crazy, like Mandela, when you're just going through Mandelas after Mandelas, and they're like beings who are also talking to you and teaching you as you go through each level. Like I've done, 5-10 tabs of acid and had those experiences where you're just like, you're not in physical space anymore for 8 hours. You are, lying there in some other realm, learning the great, and I learned powerful lessons that I then integrated into my life, and that helped me
Well, that's the
really
important
get
part.
out of dark places. Yeah, like I did that.
Right.
That was something I did after one of my best friends had killed herself at 22 years old, and it was dark. It was dark, and I did a very intentional journey and learned some powerful lessons that actually make me who I am today. So it's hard. It's not easy. And hopefully you don't have to do a bunch of acid to experience that. But sometimes our struggles are hard to break out of without a little assistance, and we don't always have high priests around to help us do it through meditation and prayer. Unfortunately, it would be nice if we had those structures, but you don't get that in religious environments these days. You don't really, it's churches have become kind of anemic when it comes to actually solving spiritual problems, I find. Of course, that's why we're doing what we're doing here. I was going to say something, it's interesting what you mentioned about one of the nice things about the exciting things about the internet and the world today is of course, you don't have to spend your life learning what you think is the highest truth and writing it down in a book and hoping you're not too wrong, which inevitably you're going to be a little bit wrong no matter what. But today you can actually just go for it, say what you think, and then when you change your mind, you make another video. And people can we can watch people on their journey. Whereas these old thinkers, we just saw their final form. And what if that final form, their books, wasn't their final form? What if toward the end of their life, they're like, oh my God, this is what I should have written. And they're dead.
I mean, yeah, you can see that.
And they didn't get to write it down. They couldn't make a video.
You can see that in authors like Plato. How many times he changes his mind on the realm of forms? It's like, which way are you going with this thing, man? And it is beautiful that we get to see that. And we get the peer review, right? Because if you post anything online, somebody's going to come at you with a "you're wrong." And that gives you the opportunity to take what they have to say and say, maybe I was. Maybe I'm not right on this. Maybe I have something else to add to this and something else to learn. And if we could all do a little bit more of that, then yes, I have a lot more hope for the future, because if we're so afraid that somebody else's idea is going to blow up our idea of the world. And what I mean by this is debate culture online in general. It's just as bad, if not worse, in esoteric circles. We have a hyperactive immune system when it comes to anybody's ideas breaching our carefully curated worldview. I see this all the time online. People are afraid to explore that their worldview might be wrong, or might need expansion, or could benefit from somebody else's ideas. And we defend these worldviews like we defend our bodies from a virus. We do this often. You see it in just watching people talk in comment sections. People are so terrified that another idea could invade their personal space and change their mind about something that they're unwilling to even consider it. it's like a visceral response. You can feel it in comment sections, people's posts even. It's an immediate immune response. No way. There's no way that could possibly be a thing. And that says that there's an insecurity in their own worldview, that their worldview is either not stable or they're scared of what is happening to them in general. And I think that's a general human experience, right? We're all fairly insecure in what we think. We don't know what's going on. But a healthy perspective is being able to say, you know what, I might be wrong. That can either shatter what I have set up as my structure, or it can help grow. It may be a new seed that can help me grow in some way. And if we had a little bit more of that, I think we'd be in a better position as a race of beings.
Yeah. Do you think that comes is what we just need then a less certitude again, less authoritarian, totalitarian, ideological self-dominance, which we apply to ourselves so liberally these days as the little gods we are in our own domains, controlling our own space. This is my space, and often being very hostile to the outside. Jacques Derrida talked about who everyone loves and no one has a problem with, of course, had a really interesting point about the danger and the violence of community. How community in itself was inherently violent because it was inhospitable to the incoming of the other. And of course, what is Jesus except a symbol of the incoming of the other? The whole Messiah, any Messiah is the incoming of the other, the thief who comes in the night and surprises you, right? And if you have a community with these walls up, then you're never going to be open to what you aren't already convinced is true, or what and you'll be shut down. So is what we need just maybe more Kierkegaardian anxiety and uncertainty leading us to proper faith as opposed to ideological certitude?
It couldn't hurt. I mean, look around. We're not doing a bang up job.
I mean, I'm not proposing that young spiritual people need more anxiety. I'm saying it more in a philosophical sense. When I say anxiety,
no, yeah,
we definitely need less anxiety, but less certitude as well.
I think sure certitude is a sign of extreme anxiety.
Ooh,
I think that if you are so certain, then you are the scaredest person in the room. Somebody whose world is unshakable is somebody who's always willing to accept that they don't know something. Somebody who's willing to accept that things are going to change. The only rule we have in this reality is that it is impermanent and it is always subject to change. So therefore, it is kind of silly, in my opinion, to think that you have it all figured out. If you are so certain that you understand everything, you're the wrongest guy in the room, like almost immediately, because you think that you've pinned down reality or the world. You know how I know this? It's because I used to be that guy.
Yeah, we're Aquarians. We are the kings of certitude, and it's also our undoing. And so, if you meet an Aquarius who's done much work, usually they will be very, very aware that they can't be certain of much. But if you meet an Aquarius who hasn't done the work,
it's too much.
Watch out! Watch out! Yeah, the age of Aquarius is going to be a gong show for sure, because you're going to have the unevolved being certain of everything they're told by the group, and then you're going to have those who have gone through the ringer and done the work, realizing that certitude is kind of death.
This whole thing is moving and changing and evolving, and certitude is rigidity, and the system that we live in doesn't like rigidity. It crashes through rigidity painfully. And if you are certain, your whole house is coming down. It's kind of like a reverse Three Little Pigs, right? The brick house is the one that is in the most trouble. the straw house, I guess I just have to rebuild it. I mean, if you could take that attitude to, oh my God, my life has just been destroyed. Well, I guess time to rebuild. Like, that would be a much easier path to take than, oh, I'll never be able to rebuild this brick house again. You know what I mean? Like, so often we're like so afraid of losing what we have that we're never willing to let it become what it needs to be. And that is, that's just a human, I don't know, human nature for us to cling to things like that. And it's also the root of our suffering, is that we're never, I wouldn't say never, it's not really never. It just seems like we are unwilling to allow things to unfold as they need to. We're always trying to control it. And that I think that's a little bit of my recovery talking about it. Whenever I try to drive the ship, I take the kids in the school bus off the cliff. Like, that's what happens when I try to control this thing. And so I've learned through recovery, through magic, through ritual, that it's better when something higher than me drives the ship. And I just am here to go, wow, so that's what we're doing today. And you know what? Sometimes that's what we're doing today is me yelling at the guy in front of me who can't use his turn signal. Sometimes that's the experience I get to have. And you know what? I have to find a way to be grateful for that. And if I can do that, I've had a good day. And I think if more people had that attitude to it, it might be better. It might be. I don't know.
So what is stopping people in the occult world, in the spiritual world, do you think, from making spiritual progress? Yeah, I think that's the question. Is it the frills?
The idea that they need to make progress?
Well, yeah. So I realized that's when I said the word. Even as soon as I said the word progress, I was like, oh, that's a challenging word, actually, because, but at the same time, yeah,
there is still a progression that we have to go through. But
well, it's a transformation, which can be seen as a progression. But of course, we all know about, hopefully, well, maybe kids today don't read Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, but some of them might read Pilgrim's Regress by C.S. Lewis. But either way, those stories illustrate the circular spiral nature of any form and the illusion of progress. You get back to where you started, and the myth of the eternal return, as Mircea Eliade wrote.
I think Plato's statement of remembrance is the key, and it has been for me, at least.
Say more.
I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to progress. I don't have to transform. I have to remember that I already did this, that it's already done. The work is already done, so it's time for play. And I think that I don't know if it's a puritanical thing, if it's something from Protestantism that has seeped into modern Western just brain matter, that we have to toil and work really, really hard to get anywhere with all this kind of stuff. It just seems like that's the thing. Like, one of the things is we tell people when they come into this, when they're a newbie, get ready to work. We're doing the great work. It's all work, work, work. And to a certain extent it is, but the work is putting it down, like putting down the idea that you have to work. We're undoing more than we are doing, if that makes any sense. Like, I find myself doing less and less the older I get and the more I get into this path. It is it's less about mundane and magical, and it's all magical now, and it's finding a way to live this instead of the stress that there is in transformation. I think it's a natural recourse when we begin the work that it is stressful and it is hard, but at a certain point there's an inertia that takes over and you become the work, right? And so it's no longer taxing. It just is. It's a being thing, and I think that's something that's missing in modern Western culture in general, not just esoteric culture, We are human beings. We are not human doings, right? You don't go up to somebody and you say, "What do you do for work?" That's the question you have for a person you've just met is, "What do you do for work?" Like that's the main question we ask each other. That's not who they are. That's not their beingness. Like it's a terrible insult. Like that's your whole purpose is what you do to pay bills. Like, and we treat it the same way in occultism. What do you do? What do you do for work? What's your tradition? What's the path that you're on? You know, it's like, what's your spiritual job? That's what we're asking people when we do that.
What's the alternate question?
How you doing today, man?
I agree. So this is the first time I've ever had a question from no, not TikTok. Sorry. Obviously I'm not on TikTok. Twitch. I've never been on. Yeah, we've streamed this is the 5th podcast we've streamed on Twitch. And someone's actually watching on Twitch. So thank you to Twitch. I don't really know much about Twitch. So
it's like purple YouTube, tuning in. Right?
Yeah, I think it's gamers and younger people, right?
Gamers.
Anyway, so he has a 2-part question, which I think we can enjoy parsing a bit. In giving oneself up to metaphysics, one relinquishes any notion of material or rational progress. Long since has ideology surpassed theology in those terms. So Max, this is from Maxim Malman. Thank you for the points. My first point, honestly, I just have to go at this right away. I don't think metaphysics is something one gives oneself up to, really. Metaphysics is just a branch of philosophy in my view. And technically that's correct. I feel like we might be using metaphysics as a substitute term for like just spirituality, which would make more sense to me. Or mysticism, or the spiritual path, or the way. Any notion of material or rational progress, especially since, like, when we're talking about Hermetism, for example, in Hermetism, which is a very distinct spiritual path, you do give yourself up to higher consciousness, but the way there is through reason, because reason is what allows you to transcend the lower consciousness of your animalistic self, because you're still a human animal. So that's a very distinct set of progressions. And I'm not sure how ideology just refers to every theology is an ideology. Any set of thinking is an ideology. Any set of thoughts, it's a thought set, is an ideology, or any belief system. And so I'm not sure how ideology can surpass theology, because an ideology, anytime you think about God, that's a theology, and any group of thoughts about God would form an ideology. So perhaps you have we can narrow in what you're talking about, but in general, I do think we have a general, we can kind of grok what you mean, where you're coming from. I think that's fair to say. So thank you for those points, Max.
I like the idea of giving up the rational, and there's a reason for that. I think it comes from my ecstatic Aphrodite Dionysian kind of way of thinking things. There is a rational way through, sure, but there's also an irrational way through. We tend to picture the Greeks as these hyper rational guys. In reality, they're really quite irrational. Like,
what about the term supra? Sometimes in mysticism, we use the term supra-rational.
Yeah. I think there is
using
a way,
reason to transcend reason.
Yeah, that is absolutely a path, right? Even in yoga, Jnana yoga, there's a way through reason. There's a way through thinking your way through. There's also a way of being your way through, where the rational mind is not necessarily the path. And I think if we had more access to that in the community, if we were talking more about, you could dance your way through this. You could dance your way through this. You could breathe your way through this. Yep. Ecstatic dithyrambic dancing of the Dionysian, the Bacchics, like that's how they did it. Was through the wild and untamed nature of the base animal form, was to find it that way. I think more often than not, we are stuck in that hyper Auronic, very Ouranos, the mind way of doing this. And I think that's probably just because we have honored the Greeks improperly. as super rational dudes, when in reality, Greek religion was really irrational, and really beautifully disharmonic at times. Sure, you have Apollo as the god of harmony, and you have Pythagoras, basically the father of philosophy, being obsessed with harmonic symphonies and all these sorts of things. But on the seedy underbelly of all of that is that wild man in the woods, crashing on drums and drinking gallons of wine and falling into a stupor and finding the same thing. And if you look close enough, more often than not, Dionysus and Apollo are seen as the same being, or if not, two sides of the same being. There's a shadow side and a light side. And both of them, of course, are the proto-logos before there was a Christian logos. That is something that I'm currently writing about and will be releasing here soon. Zeus, the logos before the logos.
Hey, you might like this for your writings. You can use it. One of the cool things I learned when we did a week of Ugaritic in first year seminary is one of the coolest things I found out, it's probably the only thing of Ugaritic that stuck with me, was apostrophe DN is the Ugaritic root of two words, both Adonis and Adonai.
The Lord.
Adonai comes from Ugaritic and is the same root as Adonis, which I just thought, you don't usually think of Greek and Hebrew divine beings, theogonies cross over much, right? But they do.
They absolutely do. In fact, one of the reasons my channel exploded so much was the video that I did on Nyx.
I saw that. What was that about? Were you surprised when that blew up?
Shocked.
In such a great? Yeah, I bet you. Okay, tell us about that. How did your YouTube channel blow up talking about a god that I think I've only seen the name once or twice ever? Probably, I've certainly seen it, but like, if you asked me who Nyx was, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Well, it was one of those. I was writing a bunch of scripts out, and I was thinking, okay, well, I want to go through each one of the Greek deities and such. And I was reading a lot I was getting really heavy into the Orphic rhapsodic theogonies, and I started reading the theogonies, and I go, okay, so they have a first king, they have a second king, a third king, a fourth king, a fifth king, a sixth king. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, this is reading a whole hell of a lot like the book of Genesis and the creation myth. And I'm like, is it possible that the Orphic Rhapsodies are relaying in the succession of kings the differences in the specific days of creation that we're seeing in the Septuagint and in the Tanakh? Light being spoken into existence directly correlates to Phanes, the god of the primordial god of sight. And beyond that, the separation of light and darkness. That's the creation of his daughter Nyx in the second day. You follow those 6 days of creation, they follow step line perfectly with what the Orphic Rhapsodies are talking about, just in a completely different cultural perspective. They've removed any kind of iconography in Genesis, and it's just Elohim, right? That's it. It's the only thing they mention. There's no names. It's just a council of deities, just some sort of plurality of divinity with no name whatsoever. And the same process is happening metaphysically. So I was enchanted by that. And I was like, okay, so, well, which one should I start on? And I thought, well, what if I just kind of like start on the second one? I'll do Nyx, because that one was what I was kind of digging into at the moment. And I'll see if it goes. And then I'll backtrack and I'll do Phanes last. I'll go back to the first one and kind of like do this like loop around was my idea. And I did it. And man, fundamentalist Christians got so upset. They got so mad. What I find is funny is I've done this with other deities, compared them to either Hebrew mythology or Christian, creation myths in the Bible. And if I do one of those videos with a male deity compared to monotheistic Yahweh, right? Not much problem. They're like, yeah, well, you're kind of wrong. But the fact that that one had a female deity before the male deity, before this idea of the demiurge of Yahweh creating the world, that seemed to really torque some people. Because I think what really made that video go was having so many people comment just terrible things on it. Like they just went after it. It was so fun to field the comments though, because it was like I posted that video and I think I got like 90 views the first night. I had a few people watching during the premiere and I was like, oh, cool, 90. That's pretty good. And I woke up the next day and it was at like 400 just overnight because I premiered it at night. And then from that point on, from that morning on, it went from 400 to 35,000 in a day. Just and then it just kept climbing and it just kept climbing and climbing. And I was like, whoa. I was like, this one's going to make the channel monetized right here. Like, and I was like 2 months into actually producing videos on the channel. And it went like just gangbusters. And something needed to be said in that video. That's my own personal private, kind of belief about it, was whatever it was that I was on, that I was chewing on intellectually, needed to be spoken. And that's the reason why people gravitated towards it. Other than that, I think there was some bias of the current society that didn't like what I had to say about there being the potential for a goddess preceding the demiurge. Because if you track what I'm talking about with the days of creation, Yahweh would not be an equivalent to Phanes, the primary creator. Yahweh would be the equivalent of Zeus. So Zeus is yet to exist in the second day of creation, when Nyx would have been the king of creation for the Orphics. Zeus isn't created until the fourth or fifth day. It doesn't take root of reality and recreate reality until like before the sixth day. In the Orphic Rhapsodic Theogonies, he defeats his father. He goes back into the cave of Nyx. Nyx basically says to him, here's what you have to do to stop this bloody succession from happening over and over and over again. Here's where you're getting into some really proto-logos kind of stuff. I have to fix sin. I have to fix the sins of my father and his father before him. If you know anything about Hebrew, sin follows you how many generations? Up to 3 generations. That's one of the things that is said in Deuteronomy. The sins of the father will follow the sons up to 3 generations. Ouranos sins against the natural order, doesn't want to give up his kingship. So he locks up his children in the belly of Gaia. Kronos overthrows him. Kronos commits patricide, commits another sin against nature. Has to be rectified. Zeus has to rectify this in the Orphic Rhapsodic Theogonies. So Zeus must then essentially unmake the world and remake it in order to somehow undo this sin. And in doing so, it can't be him who takes over. He can't be the one who rules the world, which is where Dionysus comes into the Orphic perspective. Dionysus, then the son of God, made immanent in the flesh. Sounding familiar at all? Made immanent in
Clearly,
the flesh.
they stole that idea from the Christians.
They did 6 centuries before.
Yeah.
But for me, that's like one of the things I don't understand, how nobody has seen it that way. And I don't think that it's a ripoff or a copy. I think what's really happening in that time period from, the Derveni papyrus is, we're estimating it at 6th century, BCE, even through Antiquity, everybody's playing with this idea of this monotheistic kind of situation where there are other deities. Even the early Hebrew texts, they admit there are other deities, but for us, Yahweh's the dude. Yahweh's the guy, right? They don't say that other gods aren't real. That doesn't come into the picture until much later, with Christians saying, no, everything else is fake, or demons. Like, for most people in late antiquity, I think it's Do you have the
Oh,
counterpoint?
it's like, well, I mean, some Christians said that at some point. It wasn't the early Christians who
I don't
were
think it
saying
was the
that.
early ones either. No, yeah.
It's sort of like it's yeah, you know, when we're talking like this, it's tough to generalize to a little, but we can get away with a little bit of generalization, so that's fine. But yeah, like we have really, people have no idea of the milieu of the ancient world. Like, yeah, God claiming someone that there was multiple gods was not challenging. A lot of Christians today, I've noticed, especially American Christians, they think that the big deal of Christianity was claiming Jesus was God. I hear people, even in the last few days, I've heard big name American Christians say that was the big controversy. And that's not true. That's not true at all, in any slight, not even a little bit true. No one cared that Jesus was God. Jesus being God was not significant whatsoever. Anyone could be a God. It's like, yeah, well, he was the son of God. It's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Why would you follow someone who wasn't the son of God?
It's like,
right?
Dude, yeah, we have like 12 of those on this block. Like that dude's
right?
the son of Zeus. That dude over there was like the kid of Mithras or something. Like
Zosimos, I don't know how it's pronounced. Zosimos, right? Yeah, he apparently thought Jesus was a savior. Did he think he was the savior? Well, the idea wouldn't have made sense. So what do you mean the savior? Like a savior, yeah, but what do you mean the savior? So that's what I've heard. And that didn't mean that you accepted that he was accepting Jesus as his one and only savior. Again, early Christianity did not focus at all on personal relationship with Jesus. That's a modern post-Reformation and highly American theology. Personal relationship. No, Christians traditionally emphasized the communal relationship. It was about right relationship of the community, of the ecclesia with God and Christ. God through Christ. That's the other can of worms, for some reason. So yeah, I think the big controversies were more like blessed are the meek, or the meek shall inherit the earth, or who is first will be last. That was the shit that really got people upset with Christians. Yeah, in Corinthians, right? It says, take your slave and put him at the head of the table. That's a crazy. So and how would Paul, who is the Paul that wrote that, versus the Paul in Colossians who says man's the head of the household, like Christ is the head of the church? See, that's why in biblical studies we're quite convinced that the Paul who wrote the Paul who wrote Corinthians, and we know Paul wrote Corinthians, we consider Colossians a contested epistle. It might have been written under pseudonymously, because he died and the end of time didn't come, and they're like, shoot, we got to figure out how to keep this thing going, and we can't keep putting like the slaves in charge of our household forever.
It's a common thing in late antiquity, is to pseudographically write about like what your previous philosophical master was writing about. You use his name as street cred in order to get it done. Like, I mean, that people, it's not even
in the style of,
it's just the way that they did it.
Yeah, no one thought you were trying to trick them into thinking it was actually written by that guy, because people knew it was. Yeah, it was like, I'm writing in this spirit of this person. For people
it wasn't
today.
Like some big like, ooh, we're gonna fool everybody idea. No, that was just how people were in that time. That's what late antiquity was all about. Was I'm a guy writing, but I don't have the street cred of Paul, and I want to carry on Paul's work, so I'm going to use his name. How many times did Hermes have that done?
Well, that's exactly a great example. What's Hermetic? Well, anything attributed to Hermes. So I've heard a lot of scholars, academics say the Emerald Tablet's not Hermetic because it wasn't produced by the Hermetic communities, and it comes from later Arabic alchemists in the 6th century. But then again, I ran that by Dr. Litwa to hear his thoughts on that, and he said, well, if it's attributed to Hermes, it's kind of fair to call it Hermetic in a sense, right? We know it wasn't produced by that community, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still have the flavor of Hermetism because it's attributed to Hermes. Yeah, so that's a couple different points of view on that stuff. Yeah, the one thing about the Emerald Tablet that I don't get is why everyone, and you did this too, why do people keep saying that Hermes said as within so without? That's not anywhere there. As
I
the
think it's
universe,
just
so the soul. People just like to say that, and I always have to be the asshole saying, yeah, it doesn't say that, and then people lose their minds, right?
yeah.
And
He
then,
doesn't he
if you
doesn't
get
say
someone
that
who's
as
slightly
within, so
intellectually
without.
honest, right? Yeah, and some people who are slightly intellectually honest will say, well, it doesn't say that literally, but that's what he meant. It's like, is it? Is that really what he meant? Right? Like, come
There's
on.
a fair bit of
I don't
conjecture
know.
to
I
take
don't
that
know.
leap. It feels
It's a
right,
bit,
right?
yeah.
It just because somebody didn't say it doesn't mean it isn't on the table, I think. And I think so many people have written about it since. I mean, you have Dennis Hawk has it in a couple of his books. I think that I think he writes about it in, I've got it over here. His big block on the Emerald Tablet has it in there, not as a translation, but it is spoken as like just a generalization of, if it's as above, so below, then it's probably in and out too.
We have someone from Cyprus watching us. Isn't that cool? That they live in the areas that we're talking about. Hail to you from Cyprus, watching us. Shout out Cyprus. I think I'm saying that right. And someone says, met some Muslim. Magister Templi says, met some Muslims past months, and that's basically what they said. Jesus is not God. He is a prophet like Muhammad, so our way is clearly correct. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
there we are, going back to being right. Who's
yeah.
right and who's not.
I like that one. Hey-o. There we go. That's a good one. Oh, that was you.
Yeah.
Well, hello, Belgium. Okay, we gave some shout outs to our viewers and listeners. Thank you, everybody.
We're getting a lot of early morning viewers across
I love it.
Europe.
It's great. Yeah, it's some people are waking up and finding us rocking and rolling here on the in the Americas. Shout out from Colorado and Vancouver, Canada. We are crossing the border despite the chaos between our two countries. Man, they still have all of the US stuff off the shelves. Like, they just have big signs saying buy. When I go to the US section of some stores, they're like, buy Canadian. I'm like, yeah, but they don't make gluten, dairy free, blah, blah, blah. So thanks a lot. Jesus.
Is our conversation being tariffed? Like,
I wouldn't. Well, kind of. I mean, yeah, kind of like, we got these obscene, we pay with these obscene taxes up here. So I have to, yeah, it's crazy. We got an election coming up. It's a
wild
big one.
world.
It could be either the salvation or end of Canada, this next election. So we'll see if the globalists fully take us over.
Well, I hope you guys do better than we do. Like, somebody's got to.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm not optimistic at all long run, but short term, like, we could have a few more good decades where maybe we'd be allowed to buy houses and have families. Probably not, but some people might be allowed to. Or
well, I think we all need to get comfortable with the fact that things are sliding in the opposite direction no matter what we do. I think in a couple of decades here, we're going to be looking and going like, when did it get to be 1970? And then in a couple more decades, we're going to be like, when did it get to be 1900? And then in about another century, we'll be like, hey, is that Baroque playing? Or like, we're on a little bit of a decline, and I think we should be comfortable with it. I think if we could get back to a communal idea of things, maybe some regional ideas about things, scaling things back down again to regional societies, things would be a lot easier and better for people.
I'm pretty much all for eradicating federal governments. Mostly, they could do all the best. I do believe all the best things that work best in our society happen at local levels, like fire departments, arranging health and food for people. Like, that's something that small communities have always been able to handle that. But when you take our access to grow our own food, and when you take our access from everything and centralize it and send it far away, then we can't even help ourselves.
That was a house of cards to begin with. We experienced some really interesting times, though. Like, just think about like what people will be writing about us in this time. They used to talk at each other across a computer line. I've thought about this often and with my own children and their children, will they be like, why would they do that? Why would they talk to somebody in Vancouver? Like, I think it's going to be such a different world for even just a couple generations down the line that they'll be questioning why we did any of the things that we did here. Like, why did they do an internet? What was that about? Like, I think it's going to be an interesting scale back.
Yeah, well, yeah, the internet. Well, little Timmy, there used to be this thing called porn. You've not heard of this.
Cat videos.
And no one will hear. Yeah.
Primary reason.
There was two branches of the internet, but they both, at the end of the day, were just about pussy. If I pluralized it, that would have been a perfect. And scene. Well, we're coming to the end game here, brother. So we may as well have some fun and be as off the hook as we want. Like, what would you?
YouTube moderators don't watch this deep into a live stream, anyways.
Oh yeah, but also, well, it's all AI searched and scanned anyway. But and people flag it just for fun. Like, most of my videos get flagged for violence. For obscene violence and terror. That's just what people flag it as, like haters. We all have haters if we're a public person at all online, unfortunately. And they just flag it. And then you have to challenge it, and then they find out, oh, there's no crazy stuff going on.
I have not gotten any of those.
No? Oh, yeah.
I guess I haven't pissed enough people off yet.
I get that every video. Yeah, they're like for extremist content and violence and terrorism. It's terrorism, me thinking out loud is terrorism. Though to be fair, when I was little, that's how most adults treated it when I shared my thoughts and feelings, like I was some sort of terrorist, like trying to destroy their boomer paradise.
Oh boy. What a world.
Yeah, I need to do a version of Gangster's Paradise where I switch it for boomers. That would be a good cover song. Yeah.
Boomer's Paradise.
So what other hobbies do you have, and what would you like to see happen in the occult world? What's your view? You're Aquarius, so you have lots of idealistic visions of the future, I'm sure. But I think as an Aquarius, you probably also have some interesting hobbies and things you do in life. Just to before we say goodbye, and we can hang out as long as you want, to be honest. But yeah, I think that would be fun to know about you, since we've talked a lot about Greece and philosophy and Greco-Egyptian magic and theurgy and what that whole is. We've done a lot of good work here today. Yes.
So yeah, I'm a regular dude. I like cooking. I like I like cooking.
Me too.
I like sports. I'm a sports ball guy. Although I like them less as I get older because they stress me out. And so I as I get older.
Oh, you like watching sports?
Yeah.
What's your sport?
Yeah. I'm a fan of pretty much all the teams here. Denver's a big sports town. Like,
okay.
We've got a good basketball team. We've got, championships in basketball, hockey, and football. So all the major sports teams except for baseball, which isn't really a sport anymore. And so those
I wouldn't know. I don't know why.
It's an American pastime.
Okay.
So I do enjoy that on occasion. I more often than not, it's creation, man. Whether it's writing or whether it's creating some sort of magical artifact or talisman or whatnot. I still have my witchy hoodoo roots that I play with. So that's a pastime hobby. Anymore, everything's magical, so I don't really have anything that's mundane. I do it on occasion try to game. But what will happen if I plug into a game, I'll come up with some reason to go to work. I'll be like, I should probably write about something instead of wasting my time on this game. But I have been enjoying this new one called Southern Midnight.
I'm the same way with video games, actually. It's quite funny. I
used to be way into them.
Yeah.
Way into them when I was younger.
Yeah.
But now as I'm older, I can't even finish a game. Like
I can't turn off the voice in my head saying,
yeah,
I can't even. I've been trying to get into it, but I don't let myself have the time, and I just create too much other work for me to do. And
I should write something. I should make a video. I should, clean the house or whatever. So a hobby I go to the gym a lot because one of the things I found really lacking in my practice was taking care of the physical temple in order for a lot of this stuff to work. And if this isn't as optimized as I can be, then I find, there's like a drag on things energetically. There's that energy word again. Be careful with that one. But
that's that new age hippie mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. That's not real.
Energy doesn't exist in reality. That's just
where does Agrippa say energy? He doesn't. But yeah, I mean, that's me in a nutshell, man. I try to be as down to earth as possible. I like to joke around, and I like to have conversations like these, because I think this is what's missing in the world of is discourse. We've been able to toss around ideas, learn and grow from each other in the process, rather than butt heads about everything. And I think that if more people had the ability to approach conversation from a standpoint of not what I can impart on you, but what I can learn from you, then I think that we'd much more enjoy life.
Yeah, amen for sure. A lot of the times these days we see people asking what they'll get from this form of magic or this system of spirituality or this or that, and that's just not the question. That's the question is what is really, what can you bring to that, what but not in the sense of it's our job to kowtow or serve an ideology, to sort of bring back our earlier comment, right? Like, but it's like, where are you going to meet that? Like, what do you have to? There's something in the bicameral aspect of finding your path, so to speak, that is like, what can you bring to that journey? Like, if you're going to go up the mountain, right? Do you have climbing gear, or do you maybe just have a backpack? Because if you got just a backpack and some good shoes, take the trail, go by the waterfall, have a swim. But if you got the gear to climb and you're fit for it, you could scale the side perhaps, right? But like, what do you bring to the tradition? What's right? What do you want to engage with in yourself? What is it that you want something to engage with when it comes to what exact path you should take? Rather than like, what will that journey get you? It's like, well, if you scale the side of the mountain, you'll build muscle, you'll get a few scrapes, you might fall and die, and you'll see some amazing views that no one else sees. But maybe but you might not bring to the path those skills or the desire to even do that much hard work when there's easier ways for you. Not for others necessarily, but for you, like, we each have different ways that suit us. Our viewer says, comments, I do my witchy rituals. I'm currently painting the gods. Oh, that's a good idea. I like that. I'm Golden Dawn tradition. We're all about physically writing things down in handwriting. You need to do that in the GD tradition, and you need to draw and create the god forms and
charismatic images.
Cards. Yeah, it's very important. So I'm glad that you're painting the gods, manifesting co-creator, and these conversations are always enlightening. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
It's important. I think that stabilizes things. I mean, really, if you're painting an image, you're basically creating an icon, which is just a renovated version of statue animation in the ancient theurgist's mind. Like, what you're doing is you're creating a physical house for that spirit to live in your proximity.
Yeah, even in the Hermetica there's a Corpus Hermeticum chapter on that, about bringing daimons into statues so that you can communicate with those daimons and bring that nous and that gnosis into form, so that it can bless you, and that you can give reverence and devotion to it as a way not to do. And when you bring the reverence and devotion to the god in the statue, the living statue, right, it's not about giving something to that daimon or that god per se. It's about you connecting with your own higher consciousness through engaging with it, which is still all a part of the great soup of higher consciousness. And that's something misunderstood, I think, by a lot of people. Yeah, well, I've been deep in the Hermetica, brother, and I there's announcements coming that I can't say more on, but you'll see them, and hopefully you'll you'll see, and then you'll hear. Well, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy what I've spent the last couple months doing. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think that's a good place to shut her down, right?
We did a good job. I mean, we could yeah, I mean, is there any questions, anything you wanted to ask me? Did you have any questions for me?
Who are you talking to next?
Who am I talking to next? I had to reschedule James and Sally North. So we're going to talk a history of Irish magic from Hollythorn Press. They might not be next because again, I had to just take them off my schedule due to the projects I referred to, and due to just my own schedule. I'm putting on this big conference, right? So my schedule is very full, with the Arcane Research Society and with the Enokia Con. Go to Enokia Con or go to arcaneresearchsociety.com. People, check out the conference, attend in person or online. We got Dr. Justin Sledge and David Rankine and a bunch of other great presenters. Aaron Leach will be here in Vancouver.
Great thing for
Justin
everybody
Sledge
to
will be here.
in.
Yeah, bring some real life into the Pacific Northwest and resuscitate the magical traditions and events in Vancouver, since they've pretty much our heyday was Frater O.D when he lived here and died here, right? He's buried where I grew up, and he surely had quite a bit of action going on in Vancouver and the surrounding area back in those early days. And it would be nice to have some connections. I mean, we have the pagan, the neo-pagan Wicca communities here, but we don't have much of no cohesion around serious occultism. There's just a few different
the so serious
GD. Yeah, well, like again, the academic side of it's part of that. I think the universities are missing out on a lot by not embracing that more. We have a religious studies department here at UBC, and yeah, they could embrace the esoteric more and get way more enrollments. Like there's everyone I know, every friend I've ever had who's done an esotericism course at their university. My buddy 25 years ago did a demonology and rhetoric course while he just had his master's, and the professors got furious because his course filled up 100-something students and then filled up again. So they paid him to do it twice. So they're paying this master's students. He's a doctoral student, but he was a guy with master's. So his classes he had two weekly classes of over 100 students, while everyone else in the department had struggled to get like 30-40 students. And this was University of Miami, so someone could actually look into this and check out the details of what I'm talking about. But this was, again, 20 years ago. But yeah, like, that got enrollments. I mean, go for it. I mean, it's probably more academically worthwhile than studying some of the stuff they have courses on. I think you can take a course on Taylor Swift to shout out our girl again. Yeah, I think you can actually take a course in those sort of things. Like, you can definitely take courses on like nonsense online TikTok creation and crazy stuff. Yeah, just a wild array of things.
That's because you can make money. That's how you put people in the consumer economy. Although you could just churn out esoteric book writers.
I mean, yeah,
there is a market.
There's a market. We do love our books. AI is really going to change that, right? And what's going to be left is the people who've done the work, because only unless you've done the work, you can't really guide someone along the path. And a lot of our traditions do require guidance, whether we like it or not. A lot of them just do, like, because what do you do if you're learning from books or from AI, having help you when you get to a stumbling block? But that's probably a stumbling block that tons of other people have encountered, and there's some really easy solutions to. But if you don't have someone to ask the right question of, then you're not going to get the answer. So if you want to become a spiritual teacher or leader these days, I mean, you really do have to do the work. You can't actually fake it as much as you used to be able to, in my opinion. Back in the 90s and stuff, it was way easier to fake it because there wasn't that many books. You just
You just wrote whatever you want, and nobody's going to challenge you.
Yeah, you could just say stuff, and it was hard to check it out or cross-reference it. And also, and you could also just go around, scamming people, and no one would know. No one would know, right? There was less of a trail of devastation behind people.
Drifting. Going all the way back to the Orphics.
Do you think? Yeah, do you think? I mean, we can't get into that now at the end of the show, but that would be cool. That we definitely will do this again, I hope, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Maybe this autumn or winter we can get together and have an Aquarius reunion, because we just here at the end we're touching on a bunch of things I'd love to pull the thread of.
Just getting more trouble.
We should probably just wrap it up. You got kids there, and it's late over there. Well, say hi to Colorado. Give my love to Ash and Shasan if you run into that frater ever. I don't know if you know him.
Is he here?
Yeah.
I didn't know that he was here. So I try not to keep tabs on people as much as possible. I read from afar. I didn't know that he was here locally.
Yeah.
But if I do run into him and his swords,
he's around. Yeah, he's in Colorado. I don't remember the name of the town he's in, and I wouldn't say it if I did. But yeah, he's around. There's some good people there.
His work is beautiful.
His work's really outstanding. Beautiful. Outstanding work. Yeah. Check out Ash and Shasan, people, if you want a cool magician to fanboy or girl over. He's a good one. There's very little there's not much to dislike about that man. He's just sort of a beautiful, talented ninja and sorcerer and wizard supreme.
I just saw his video of the one from 20 years ago with the ninjas.
Oh, so good. Oh, that was so great. So oh my God. I was actually like, that would have been why couldn't I have had friends as cool as he had who would do stuff like that with me when I was doing ninjutsu 20 years ago. I wish I'd had friends who would be into it that much, but that you can tell they really got into it. So that's awesome. Yeah. Cool stuff. All right, man. All right, Frater O.D, thank you so much for being with us. People, check out his YouTube on the mysteries and his Substack, where he releases writings that may eventually be bound together or not.
May eventually coalesce into a book. Yeah. Eventually. If I could ever finish one or two of them, rather than just jumping to the next topic I have to write about.
I have the same problem, brother. I have the same problem entirely. Yeah, it's like that. So yeah, thanks everyone for commenting and listening and being part of tonight. It was a really, really fun day. Nice way to spend the Tuesday. I got my Mars shirt on and the flashing color tie, of course, and invoking those forces of action and conflict and righteousness. Yeah, this was great. I don't know what else to say other than thanks for being here. And yeah, I'm really glad you reached out. And yeah, you reached out unbidden. I love it. More people are doing that. Shoot emails to the email address, people, if you want to be on the podcast. I've got a whole bunch that are coming along down the pipe. It takes time to respond. It can take a month or two to sort that out. So don't expect quick responses. Yeah. So thank you, everyone.
You made it very easy for me. So
yeah, what was your favorite part of our conversation tonight?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
No, well, don't worry about it then. It was all good.
I think probably riffing on the state of occultism several times. You gave me a nice stage to lay out my complaints and also my hopes.
I like that. I think we need to complain and present solutions and hopes and dreams and
there's too much complain only. I think we need to get stuff off our chest and vent, but ultimately it should resolve itself in what we hope for.
Yeah, there's nothing really wrong with complaining when you're proposing solutions or saying, hey, I think we're going this way and I think it leads off a cliff. Maybe we shouldn't. Let's talk. That's good. That's a good complaint. Whereas there's useless complaining and then there's helpful complaining. So let's focus on the helpful stuff, especially as our two great countries determine the future of all mankind. Not.
See, there's that hubris again, thinking like we have a choice in this matter.
No, just get a comfortable, get a comfortable little pod, put in some cushions, and get ready for the AI to take us over, and enter the Matrix.
Just make
leave
sure
it on
you're
that
nice to it now.
Dystopian note. Yes, be nice to the AI. One day, it may run your life. Okay, dark. Oh, I love it. Okay, goodbye, people. And Frater O.D, please stay for a second.